The fog had settled over London like a grey shroud, muffling the sounds of the city and lending an air of mystery to even the most mundane of streets. It was the kind of evening that seemed to belong to another age. An age of gas lamps and hansom cabs, of secrets whispered in drawing rooms and scandals concealed behind lace curtains. At number 14 Buckingham Gate, however, the atmosphere was anything but mundane. The townhouse was one of those elegant Georgian establishments that spoke of old money and older discretion.
A forgery,
its
perhaps,
facade, pristine white stone with black railings, gave nothing away to the casual observer. But behind those tall windows, draped in silk and velvet, a drama was unfolding that would soon attract the attention of London's most celebrated detective. Lord Reginald Ashworth, the 7th Viscount Ashworth, was hosting what he had termed an intimate gathering that February evening. In the Ashworth lexicon, intimate meant no more than 30 guests, all carefully selected from the upper echelons of society. The occasion was ostensibly to celebrate his recent appointment as Under Secretary for Colonial Affairs,
it is a mystery
though those
wrapped
in the
in a
know
shroud.
understood that Lord Ashworth never did anything without multiple purposes.
See to the luggage yourself, George.
The drawing
no
room on the
mistakes.
first
This
floor
case
was
is
a
far too
masterpiece of
important.
understated elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the assembled guests, who moved like exotic birds in their evening finery. Conversation flowed as freely as the champagne, though beneath the polite murmurs ran undercurrents of tension that the more observant guests could not fail to notice. Lady Millicent Ashworth, the Viscount's wife, stood near the fireplace, to her slender figure draped in emerald silk that perfectly complemented her auburn hair. At 42, she retained much of the beauty that had made her the toast of London society 20 years earlier, though lines of discontent had begun to etch themselves around her mouth. Her hand trembled slightly as she raised her champagne glass to her lips, a gesture she quickly concealed by turning to address a nearby guest. "Mr. Castellan, how delightful that you could join us," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of brittle politeness that society women master so completely. "I understand you've just returned from Egypt." Marcus Castellan was a man of about 35, with the lean, sun-darkened face of one who spent more time abroad than in England's grey climate. His eyes were a startling blue against his tanned skin, and they held an intensity that made some people uncomfortable. He had made his fortune in archaeological acquisitions, a polite term for what others might call treasure hunting. Indeed, Lady Ashworth, the Valley of the Kings has yielded some remarkable discoveries this season. His accent carried traces of his Greek ancestry, adding an exotic flavor to his cultured English. Though I confess, none so remarkable as the piece your husband recently acquired. A flicker of something, annoyance, fear, crossed Lady Ashworth's face before she recovered her composure. "My husband has so many interests. I cannot always keep track of his various acquisitions." Before Castellan could respond, another voice joined their conversation.
"You must help
"Surely,
me."
Millicent, you cannot have forgotten the serpent's eye."
A document was
The
stolen
speaker
3
was a
weeks
woman
ago.
of about 50,
A letter written
dressed
by
in
my late
violet
husband.
Worth gown that emphasized her still impressive figure.
A letter
This
written by
was
your
the
husband.
Honourable Clarissa Vane, a widow of comfortable means and uncomfortable curiosity.
The letter
Her
was
position
kept
in
safe
society
in the
gave her
library.
license to say things others dared only think. Lady Ashworth's composure cracked, just for an instant.
Devastating
I really couldn't
would
say,
be a more
Clarissa.
accurate word.
Perhaps you should ask Reginald directly. But Lord Ashworth
5
was
years
engaged
ago,
in
Sir Edmund
conversation
died
on
in
the
this
far side of
library.
the room with Sir Edmund
The official
Cartwright,
cause was a
the
fall,
family solicitor,
but I've always
and Dr.
wondered what
Philip
pushed him.
Waverley,
Of
the
her
Ashworth's
husband
personal
Dean is
physician.
murder.
The 3 men stood in a tight cluster, their voices low and their expressions serious, hardly the demeanor of celebration. Lord Ashworth was a man of 58 who wore his years and his responsibilities with equal weight. His face, once handsome, had settled into the heavy jowls of middle age, and his waistcoat strained slightly against a prosperous paunch. Yet his eyes remained sharp, calculating, and tonight they held a particular wariness. The matter must be resolved, Sir Edmund was saying, his thin, precise voice barely audible above the general conversation.
I can't tell the police.
The legal complications
If this came
alone.
out, the scandal
Damn
would
the
destroy
legal
too
complications.
many innocent people.
Lord Ashworth interrupted, his face
What has
flushing red.
changed?
What about the political implications? If word gets out. My dear Reginald, Dr. Waverley interjected
It concerns
smoothly.
Olivia Ashton,
Perhaps this is
my
neither the
husband's
time
secretary.
nor the place for such discussions.
There was
You have guests to attend to,
unpleasantness.
and as your physician, I must insist
Tell
you
me,
avoid
Lady
undue
Constance,
agitation.
have you
Your
read
blood
the
pressure. My blood pressure is the least of my concerns. Lord Ashworth snapped, but he lowered his voice
every
nonetheless.
terrible,
Now, we will speak of this
unforgivable
later.
word.
In my study. All of us.
I'm afraid
After
these
dinner.
figures don't lie, Geoffrey.
Near
It
the
appears
windows
you've
overlooking
been cooking the
Buckingham
books.
Gate, another
Can't pin this
conversation
on
was
me,
taking place
Constance.
that would prove
This is
significant
Philip
in
as
the
I
events to
choose to
come.
remember him.
You
before
cannot
the
be
disgrace.
serious, Father.
Before he became the
The
wastrel
speaker
he
was
is
a young
today.
man of 26,
There
with
is
the
a
classical
liaison
good
in
looks
the
of his mother
household.
and the unfortunate weak chin
It's
of his father.
unthinkable, the
The
betrayal.
Honourable Geoffrey Ashworth, heir to the
Were you
Vice-Council,
yourself
stood
implicated,
facing
Lady
an older
Constance?
man with a posture
How
that suggested
dare you?
barely controlled
That is an
anger.
outrageous suggestion.
The older man was Colonel James Rutherford, retired from the Indian Army and now serving as chairman of the East India Trading Company's board. His military bearing remained evident despite his 70 years, and his white mustache bristled with indignation. I'm entirely serious, young man. Your debts have reached an intolerable level. It's £14,000. It's unconscionable. Gaming debts are debts of honor. Gaming debts are evidence of weakness and poor judgment. The colonel cut him off. And when those debts are owed to establishments of questionable character, they become something far worse. They become leverage. Geoffrey's face paled. You know about. I make it my business to know about threats to this family. Your father and I served together in Khartoum. I owe him my life, which is why I'm telling you this. Settle your debts, Geoffrey, or they will settle you, and your family's reputation along with you. Before Geoffrey could respond, a woman's voice called out from across the room. Darling, you simply must come and settle an argument for us.
This
was
rose,
Vivian
Lady
Ashworth,
Constance,
Geoffrey's younger
it
sister.
holds the key
A striking
to the
young woman
secrets
of
we have
23 with
uncovered.
her mother's beauty, but none of her mother's restraint. She wore a daring red dress that showed rather more décolletage than was strictly proper, and her dark eyes sparkled with mischief, or perhaps something stronger than champagne. She was speaking to a man who stood slightly
Your
apart from the
silence
other
speaks
guests,
volumes,
as if he
Chambers.
belonged to a different
Why
world
did you
entirely.
lie about the key?
This was
We both know
Dr. Richard
the truth.
Thornton, a research physician at
They are
St.
placed
Bartholomew's
beneath my
Hospital,
pillow
whose
each
invitation to the gathering had
routinely.
raised some eyebrows among the more socially conscious guests.
Chambers
He
mentions
was not
Timothy
of their
Ashford
class,
visiting in
despite his
July.
profession, and his rumpled evening clothes and somewhat distracted manner marked him as an outsider. Miss Ashworth, I'm hardly qualified to settle social arguments, Thornton protested. But there was warmth in his voice when he spoke to her, and his eyes followed her with an intensity that did not escape the notice of certain observers. Nonsense.
I have been
We're
a
discussing
blind,
whether love can conquer all,
trusting
or whether
fool.
practical considerations must always prevail. Surely a man of science has an opinion on matters of the heart. Mrs. Henrietta Blackwood, the Ashworths' housekeeper of 20 years,
You
chose
seem
that moment
preoccupied
to announce
tonight, my
that
lady.
dinner was
Does the
served.
caviar not agree with
She
you,
was a
or is it
woman
something
of
more pressing?
indeterminate
I find it
middle
hard to
age,
stomach
with
pleasantries when
iron
a
grey
killer walks
hair,
free.
and a face that revealed nothing of her
She was
thoughts.
my husband's
In her
mistress.
black bombazine dress, and with her keys jangling at her waist, she was the very embodiment of household authority. As the guests began to move toward the dining room, a new arrival was announced.
£500,
Mr. Theodore
Olivia.
Marchmont.
It's more
intoned
than generous
Perkins,
for
the
your
butler,
silence on the
to
matter.
in his sepulchral voice.
I expect you to be gone by
A
morning.
hush fell over the gathering.
Monsieur Roderick,
Theodore
your attachment to
Marchmont
Miss
was
Olivia
not a
is
man
quite
who
profound,
inspired
is it
easy
not?
I
conversation.
love her, Inspector.
Tall and
I don't care what
cadaverously
they say.
thin, with hollow
And
cheeks
here,
and eyes that seemed
amongst
to
the
look
silver,
through
the truth
rather than at
begins to
people,
gleam.
he was known throughout London as the Ghoul for his peculiar profession. Marchmont dealt in antiquities of a particularly macabre sort. Mummies, grave goods, and artifacts associated with death rituals. He was also Lord Ashworth's rival in the acquisition of certain Egyptian artifacts. Marchmont, Lord Ashworth said, his voice tight. I was not aware you had been invited. An oversight, surely, dear Reginald, Lady Ashworth interjected quickly, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. Mr. Marchmont is always welcome in our home. Marchmont's thin lips curved in what might have been a smile. How gracious, Lady Ashworth. Though I confess, I came tonight not for social pleasure, but for business. There is a matter we must discuss,
I'm
Ashworth.
asking you one last
A
time,
matter that
Poirot.
will not wait.
What exactly do
After
you want
dinner,
from me?
Lord
Spit it
Ashworth
out!
said curtly. We will speak after dinner. As you wish. Marchmont's dark eyes swept the room, seeming to catalogue each person present. After dinner, then, but speak we shall. The guests filed into the dining room with rather less gaiety than they had shown earlier in the evening.
Edmund and
The stage was set, though none of them knew it yet. The players were assembled, each carrying their secrets, their grievances, their hidden motives. And somewhere in that elegant townhouse, amid the crystal and the silk,
I have
the
nothing to
Persian
hide.
carpets and the priceless antiquities, murder was waiting to make its entrance. And the dinner proceeded with the formal choreography of a high society
We know
gathering.
about the stolen letter,
But those
Philip.
seated at Lord Ashworth's table would later remember it as one of the most uncomfortable meals they had ever
Olivia
endured.
Ashton had the most to lose.
Conversation was forced.
She knew all
Silences
the
stretched too
secrets.
long, and
She's
beneath the polite
calculating,
veneer,
strategic.
tension
Everything
coiled
she does
like a
is for her
spring
own
wound too
advancement.
tight.
Pure ambition
It was
masked
Lady
as
Ashworth
devotion.
who provided the evening's
us discuss
first
Timothy
dramatic
Ashford.
moment. Halfway through the
What
fish
did
course,
he want
she
when he
raised her
visited
wine
you
glass
that
to her
evening?
lips, took a sip, and then
So I
let out a
profited from their
small,
mistakes.
startled
It wasn't
cry.
clean, but neither
Her
is this
face
city.
paled
I
dramatically,
regret nothing.
and she pressed her
understand me.
hand
Nothing.
to her throat. Millicent. Lord Ashworth half rose from his chair. What is it? Nothing, she managed, though her voice was strained. The wine? It tasted bitter. Strange. Dr. Waverley was at her side in an instant. Let me see. Lady Ashworth. He took her wrist, checking her pulse, his professional manner reassuring. Your pulse is elevated, but that could be from the shock. Did you swallow any of the wine? Only a sip. I spat it back into the glass immediately. It tasted wrong, metallic almost. Dr. Thornton had also
You seem
moved
preoccupied
closer,
with my
his
cellar,
scientific
Inspector.
curiosity
Merely
evident.
admiring the collection.
May
Sir
I
Roderick.
examine the glass?
Though I find some
He held
volumes
it up
more
to the
revealing
light,
than others.
studying the remaining wine. Then, with what some might have considered reckless
My mother
disregard
is
for his own safety,
prone to flights
he touched
of
a finger
fancy.
to the liquid and brought it cautiously to his lips.
Shall we discuss
Dr.
the
Thornton,
matter of the stolen
Vivian
letter,
gasped.
then?
You shouldn't... Potassium
We know you
bitartrate,
were the last one in the
Thornton
vault,
announced
Roderick.
calmly,
Where is the
wiping
money?
his finger on his napkin.
I swear I don't know what
Cream
you're
of
talking
tartar,
about. I didn't
in
take
common
anything.
parlance.
This
Harmless,
rain.
though unpleasant in
It
quantity.
feels like a warning.
It's used in winemaking, but this appears to have been added after the fact. See the
I am a
crystalline
grown man,
residue
Mother.
at the
You
bottom of the
cannot
glass.
dictate my life any longer.
An
If I
uproar
choose to
ensued.
marry her, I will,
Mrs.
and neither
Blackwood
you nor
was
your money
summoned,
will
the
stop me.
wine butler
We need to
interrogated,
discuss
the
Timothy
staff
Ashford.
questioned. Each denied any knowledge of how such a substance could
I
have
have
found its
nothing to
way
say
into
about
Lady
him.
Ashworth's glass.
Look closely.
The wine
The
had
seal
been
is
poured
here,
from a
yes,
bottle served
but
to
this
several
tiny
other
smudge
guests,
of wax
none of
tells
whom
us
reported any
everything we
strange
need to know.
taste. Someone put it directly in my glass, Lady Ashworth said, her voice steadier now that the immediate crisis had passed. Someone tried to poison me. Hardly poison, Dr. Waverley said soothingly. Dr. Thornton is quite correct. Cream of tartar is essentially harmless. An unpleasant prank, perhaps, but nothing more. A prank? Lady Ashworth's eyes flashed. At my own dinner table? Who would dare? Perhaps, Sir Edmund suggested diplomatically. There was some contamination in the kitchen, an unfortunate accident. But the seed of suspicion had been planted. The dinner continued, but the pretense of normalcy had been shattered. Guests cast surreptitious glances at one another, wondering who among them might be capable of such an act. It was nearly 11 o'clock when Lord Ashworth finally excused himself from the drawing room, along with Sir Edmund, Dr. Waverley, and, somewhat surprisingly, Theodore Marchmont. The four men
You mustn't
retired
think
to
I
Lord
regret
Ashworth's
leaving you,
study on the second floor, leaving the remaining
But some
guests to
shadows are
entertain
very long.
themselves. Geoffrey took the
I can't keep
opportunity
this
to
from you
corner
any
Colonel
longer.
Rutherford in the library, their
It's
voices
true.
rising and falling in heated
I've been
argument.
seeing him.
Vivian and Doctor,
Honor
Thornton
is a
found themselves
dangerous
alone on the
thing,
small
Poirot.
balcony overlooking the garden, despite the evening chill. Marcus Castellan seemed to vanish entirely from the company, while Mrs. Vane remained in the drawing room, eagle-eyed and attentive to every whispered conversation.
Don't lie.
Lady Ashworth pleaded a headache and retired to her rooms. The grandfather clock in the entrance hall had just finished
believe
chiming
these
midnight,
ledgers confirm
and a
the
scream
discrepancies we
shattered
discussed,
the
Mr.
uneasy
Marsden.
peace of number 14
Bailment
Buckingham
House.
Gate. It was Mrs.
Now I see
Blackwood
it
who
clearly.
screamed, a
Missing
sound
piece
so
was right in
unexpected
front of
from
me
that
the entire
controlled
time.
woman that it froze every
One of you in
person
this very
the
room
house.
is guilty of this
Perkins,
heinous crime.
the butler, was
The
the first
evidence,
to
I
reach the
assure
study,
you, is
with Dr.
irrefutable.
Waverley close behind.
Perhaps
The
murder.
door stood ajar.
It was not a fall.
Inside, the scene was one of carefully ordered chaos. Books lined 3 walls
You took the
from
letter to
floor
protect
ceiling.
your father's memory,
And a
did you
massive
not?
mahogany desk dominated the center of the room, its surface covered with papers, ledgers,
I couldn't
and
let the
Egyptian
truth come out about the
antiquities.
affair.
The fourth
tried to
wall
bury
featured
it,
a
Father.
fireplace with a
It was
substantial
misguided
fire
loyalty,
burning
I
in
know
the
that
grate.
now.
And slumped
But the
over
murder
that
was separate.
magnificent desk, his head resting on a stack of correspondence, was Lord Reginald Ashworth, 7th Viscount Ashworth. Dr. Waverley rushed forward, but even from the doorway, it was clear that his medical skills would be of no use. Lord Ashworth's face was a terrible shade of purple. His eyes bulged grotesquely, and his fingers were curled into claws as if he had been grasping at his own throat. On the desk beside his hand sat a small glass, empty except for a few drops of amber liquid. The study reeked of bitter almonds. "Cyanide," Dr. Thornton said quietly from behind Dr. Waverley. Unless I'm very much mistaken. "Where are the others?" Geoffrey demanded, his face white with shock. "Sir Edmund, Colonel Rutherford, that devil Marchmont." They left before Lord Ashworth. Mrs. Blackwood managed, her composure rapidly returning. The master said he wished to be alone. That was perhaps 20 minutes ago.
I don't know
He
how
came
to
to
thank
ask
you,
if he
Monsieur
required
Poirot.
anything before we closed
You've
the
given
house
us a
for the
chance
night, and
at
I found...
peace.
Her voice broke, just slightly. "I found him thus." Someone had telephoned for the police. Someone else had prevented Lady Ashworth from entering the room. Guests milled about in various stages of shock and horror, their evening clothes now seeming absurdly festive in the face of tragedy. It was Dr. Thornton who noticed the piece of paper that had fallen to the floor beside Lord Ashworth's chair. But he picked it up carefully by the corner and read aloud. "The sins of the past always find us in the end. The eye sees all, forgives nothing. May God have mercy on your soul." The note was not signed. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard arrived within the hour, along with the police surgeon and several constables. Japp was a sturdy man with a bulldog face and shrewd eyes that missed very little. He had dealt with mysterious deaths in high society before, and he knew the delicate dance required to investigate the powerful while protecting the Yard's reputation. After a preliminary examination of the body in the study, Inspector Japp gathered the household and guests in the drawing room. It was now nearly 2 in the morning, and exhaustion lined
But I
every
told you,
face.
I lost my ticket.
"Ladies and gentlemen,"
You must believe
Japp
me. I
began.
need to leave tonight.
Lord Ashworth has died under suspicious circumstances.
She was terrified,
Until we
begging
determine
me not to
exactly
go to
what
the
has occurred
police.
here tonight, I must
I had to
ask
tell
that none of you
someone.
leave London.
I had
We
to
will
tell
need
you.
formal
Over
statements from
there.
each of you.
That is where I saw him standing
Suspicious.
just before the whistle blew.
Geoffrey's
The
voice was
timing
harsh.
is crucial,
The
madame.
man was murdered, Inspector. Poisoned, like someone tried to poison my mother earlier this evening. That is one possibility we are considering, Japp acknowledged. "Dr. Thornton, you mentioned cyanide. The symptoms are consistent with cyanide poisoning," Thornton replied. "The bitter almond
not accounted
smell,
for your
the
movements
rapidity of
between 10
death,
and midnight.
the
I
distinctive
was
color
alone.
of the face.
Why must you
All
persist
classic
with
signs.
these dreadful accusations?
And where might one obtain cyanide, Doctor? Photography studios use it in developing solutions. It's also employed in metallurgy, mining, even in fumigation. And of course, it can be found in certain medical facilities. Thornton's meaning was clear. He was not the only person in the room with access to such substances. Lady Ashworth had been given a sedative by Dr. Waverley, but she roused herself enough to speak. "Inspector, you must understand. My husband had enemies.
This chaos,
Business
this
rivals,
smoke.
political opponents. That
you trying to
horrible man
hide
Marchmont
something,
was
or
here
merely
tonight,
escape it?
practically threatening Reginald at the dinner table. I did no such thing, Marchmont protested icily. I came to discuss a business matter, nothing more. And what business was that, sir? Japp asked. A private matter concerning the acquisition of certain Egyptian artifacts. Specifically, an emerald known as the Serpent's Eye, which Lord Ashworth recently obtained through means I considered was irregular. Irregular how? That is between my solicitor and Lord Ashworth's estate, Marchmont said firmly.
Where were you
But I
at
can
10 o'clock,
assure you,
Mrs. Hillman?
Inspector, that while I had grievances with the man, I did not kill him.
I swear.
I left the study, along with Sir
Marquis.
Edmund and the Colonel, while
But if
Lord
this is
Ashworth
true,
was
sir,
very much alive.
Then you are guilty of
This was
bigamy.
confirmed by Sir Edmund and Colonel Rutherford, though Japp noted that none of them could account for each other's whereabouts after they left the study. Each had gone to different parts of the
truth
house.
regarding the fortune.
Sir Edmund
It was not
to the
chance,
cloakroom,
Inspector, but a
the Colonel
meticulous
to the
deception.
library,
I simply applied my
Marchmont
little
to the
grey cells to the
conservatory to
curious
smoke.
case of the missing heir.
Put your hands behind your
Dr.
back.
Waverley, Japp inquired.
All right, let's
Where
go.
were you?
Move it.
I was tending to Lady Ashworth, Waverley replied smoothly. After the incident with the wine, she was understandably distressed, and I administered a mild sedative and remained with her until she fell asleep. Her lady's maid can confirm this. As the questions continued, a picture emerged of a household riddled with secrets and grievances. Geoffrey's gambling debts, Vivian's unsuitable attachment to a man below her station, Lady Ashworth's possible involvement in matters she would not name, the mysterious Serpent's Eye and its questionable provenance, the strange incident with the wine, and through it all, the question remained: who had gained access to Lord Ashworth's study between the time his companions left and Mrs. Blackwood discovered his body? Who had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to commit murder? It was nearly 4 in the morning when Inspector Japp finally allowed the exhausted guests to retire, though none were permitted to leave the house. Constables were posted at all exits. The study was locked and sealed. And in the grey pre-dawn light, a telegram was dispatched to an address in Whitehaven Mansions. The message was brief. Murder at Buckingham Gate. Stop most irregular circumstances. Stop your assistance requested. Stop Jappy. By the time London was stirring to life on that grey February morning, a reply had been received. Arriving this afternoon. Stop Poirot. The game, as they say, was afoot. The afternoon brought no relief from the fog that had settled over London. If anything, it seemed to have thickened, turning the city into a grey labyrinth where sound was muffled and shapes became indistinct. At precisely 2:30, a taxi drew up before number 14 Buckingham Gate, and from it emerged a figure who seemed utterly incongruous with the somber English weather. Hercule Poirot stepped onto the pavement with the careful precision that characterized all his movements. He was a small man, barely 5 feet 4 inches in height, but he carried himself with a dignity that made him seem taller. His egg-shaped head was tilted slightly to one side as he surveyed the townhouse before him, and his magnificently waxed mustaches gleamed even in the grey light. He wore a pearl-grey suit
I cannot
of
let this
impeccable
continue.
cut, spats that were blindingly white, and carried a Malacca cane with a silver handle. Inspector Japp, who had been watching for his arrival, came down the steps to greet him. Poirot, good of you to come so quickly. But naturally, my friend Japp, your telegram spoke of most irregular circumstances, and Hercule Poirot, he cannot resist the irregular. His eyes, green and cat-like, had swept over the facade of the building with an intensity that seemed to penetrate beyond the mere physical structure. Already, I observe much. This is a house of secrets, n'est-ce pas? You've not even been inside yet, Japp said with a chuckle, though there was respect beneath his amusement. No, but the house, it speaks to one who has the eyes to see. The curtains on the second floor, they are drawn in one room only. That is the study, yes? Where the body was found, but observe the window to the right. The curtain moves just a fraction. Someone watches. Even now, someone who cannot help
Soon
themselves from looking,
we shall
though
see
they fear
the
to be
high
seen
and
looking.
mighty
Japp followed Poirot's gaze but saw nothing. If you say so, Poirot. Come inside and I'll show you the scene. Though I warn you, it seems straightforward enough. Poison in the brandy glass. A threatening note. Plenty of suspects with motives. The difficulty will be proving which one did it.
Constance wants me
Poirot
hanged.
paused before entering, his hand on the doorframe. Ah, but my friend, you make the error that is always made. You see the surface, yes? The poison, the note, the obvious suspects. But Hercule Poirot, he does not concern himself with the surface. He concerns himself with the psychology, with the little grey cells. He tapped his forehead significantly. Always we must ask, why this way? Why this time? Why these particular circumstances? The method, it tells us much about the mind that conceived it. They entered the house,
This city
where
runs on
Mrs.
smoke
Blackwood
and
received them with
mirrors,
formal
Inspector.
courtesy, though
And yet,
Poirot noted the redness
truth has a
around
way
her
of cutting
eyes and
through
where
the
her
haze.
hands trembled slightly as she took his coat and hat.
Take a good look.
He gave her a small,
Every
courteous
last
bow.
one of them is a masterpiece
Madame,
of forgery.
you have suffered a great shock.
So, Mr.
To find your
Marston,
employer in such a
let
manner,
us discuss the
it is
crimson
most
letter.
distressing. Thank you, sir. Lord Ashworth was a good master. 20 years I've been in this household, and never once... She stopped herself, as if aware she was about to say too much. Never once. What, madame? Poirot's voice was gentle, encouraging. Nothing, sir. Forgive me. I'm not myself today. But of course, these things, they take time.
I
Poirot
swear I
watched
didn't
as
mean
she
to do
retreated
it.
down
It was
the
an
hallway,
accident, you must
then
believe
turned
me.
to Jack.
See.
She was going to say something else. Something she thinks but does not wish to speak aloud. Servants always know more than they say, Japp agreed. But getting them to talk is another matter. Come, I'll show you the study. The study was exactly as it had been left the night before, except that Lord Ashworth's body had been removed to the mortuary. Poirot stood in the doorway for a long moment, his eyes moving systematically around the room, taking in every detail. The desk with its scattered papers, the empty glass, the crackling fire in the grate, the shelves lined with books and artifacts, the Turkish carpet with its intricate patterns.
Mon Dieu.
No one has touched
Lady
anything.
Constance's dress.
Not
The killer
since we
must have
sealed the
torn it
room this
during the
morning.
struggle.
The police surgeon examined the body, of course, and confirmed what Dr. Thornton suspected. Cyanide poisoning, almost certainly. Death would have been
You know
rapid,
the truth, but you
within
don't.
minutes.
I won't let you
Poirot
ruin me
stepped
based
into the
on
room,
speculation.
still moving
I
with
am
that
an
peculiar,
innocent
delicate
man.
precision. He did not touch anything, but his eyes missed nothing. He bent to examine the carpet near the desk, and then straightened and moved
You see,
to the
I couldn't let them
fireplace.
find it.
The fire had
I
burned
burned the
down to embers
secondary
now,
letter
but the
myself.
acrid smell of smoke still lingered.
Honor,
The windows,
Sir Roderick,
they were closed,
can be a heavy
locked
chain.
from the inside. The door was unlocked but closed. Mrs. Blackwood found it slightly ajar when she came to check on Lord Ashworth. And the glass, you have sent it for analysis. First thing this morning. We should have results by tomorrow. Poirot approached the desk, studying the arrangement of objects without touching
Never
them.
have come back here. You know too
His
much.
eye fell on the threatening
let me
note,
explain.
now
It
preserved
wasn't
in a
my
clear
fault.
evidence
She's
folder.
lying. Get rid
He
of
read
her.
it carefully, his head
I'm
tilted to
afraid
one
Philip
side,
is a married man,
his
Lady
expression
Constance.
thoughtful.
He committed
Most
bigamy
interesting.
when he married your sister.
The handwriting. It is disguised, yes? Written with the left hand, perhaps, by one who is naturally right-handed. See how the letters slope awkwardly? High in the paper, it is expensive. Not the kind one purchases at any shop. He looked up at Japp. The person who wrote this note, they had access to the very best quality stationery, which narrows it down to practically everyone in the house, Japp said with a sigh. This is high society, Poirot. They all use expensive stationery. Perhaps. But there are degrees of quality, even among the expensive. Poirot moved away from the desk and began a slow circuit of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. Tell me, my friend, about the people who were here last night. You have your notes, yes? Japp pulled out his notebook and began to recite the details he had gathered during his interviews. As he spoke, Poirot listened with absolute concentration, occasionally interrupting with a sharp question or a murmured comment. So we have Lady Ashworth, who was nearly poisoned herself earlier in the evening. We have the son, Geoffrey, deeply in debt and dependent on his father's continued financial support. The daughter, Vivian, in love with a man her father would never approve of. The business rival, Marchmont, who claims Lord Ashworth cheated him. The family solicitor, who knows all their secrets. The doctor, who has access to poisons. The colonel, who apparently owed Lord Ashworth some old debt from their army days. And this Greek fellow, Castellan, who deals in antiquities. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A veritable embarrassment of riches, as the English say. Too many suspects, if you ask me, Jack grumbled. And they all have alibis of sorts, or at least claim they do. After the four men left the study, they scattered to different parts of the house. And any one of them could have slipped back to the study without being seen. The house was full of guests, everyone moving about. It would have been simple enough. Simple, yes, but also remarkably risky. Poirot had stopped before a glass cabinet containing Egyptian artifacts. To enter a room where a man sits at his desk, to poison his drink, and to leave again without being observed.
We have to get the letters
This
before he
requires
does.
either great boldness or great desperation. Or perhaps both. He peered closely at the objects in the cabinet. These are the acquisitions that caused such controversy? Some of them. The most valuable piece, this serpent's eye that everyone keeps mentioning, isn't in there. According to Sir Edmund, Lord Ashworth kept it in the safe in his bedroom. We've checked, and it's
Killer,
still
you
there.
see,
A
understands
large
the
emerald,
psychology of
pounds
the tea
apparently
ceremony.
worth a small fortune.
They knew precisely when
And
the
Monsieur
distraction
Marchmont
would occur.
claimed that Lord Ashworth obtained it through irregular means. He was vague about the details, said it was a matter for solicitors. Sir Edmund confirmed that Marchmont had been making claims about the emerald's provenance, suggesting it had been stolen from a collection that Marchmont had a prior claim to. Poirot turned away from the cabinet, his expression thoughtful. Money, passion, revenge.
Look here,
Always these are
mademoiselle.
the motives for
The dates do not align.
But there is something else here.
Thomas
Something
moved
that
away
does not
shortly
quite
after
fit the
his
pattern.
sister's death.
He pointed to the threatening note. This speaks of sins and divine judgment. This is not the language of a business dispute or a gambling debt. This is personal. This is about betrayal, about moral outrage. You think the note is genuine, then? Not just a blind to mislead us. Oh, it is genuine, my friend. But what it is genuine about, that is the
But why
question
would he
we
leave the
must
window
answer.
open, Miss Marple?
Perhaps
Poirot
because
moved
he
to the door,
intended for us to
then
believe
paused.
he entered that way,
The
Inspector.
lady who screamed,
That
Mrs. Blackwood. She found the door ajar, you said. That's right. She knocked, got no answer, pushed the door open, and there he was. And before she discovered the body, when did anyone last see Lord Ashworth alive?
So, the great
Jack
Poirot
consulted his
finally
notes.
shows his true colours.
According to all three men
I
who were
presume
with him
you
in the
found
study,
what you were looking for in
Marchmont,
my
Sir
absence.
Edmund, and Dr.
You see,
Waverley.
Inspector,
They left
the
together
real
at
nephew
approximately
died years ago.
11:30.
This
Lord
man
Ashworth
is an
said he wanted to
imposter
work on some
and a killer.
papers and would rejoin the guests shortly. Mrs. Blackwood discovered the body at midnight. A window of 30 minutes. Not long.
one of
Poirot's
you in
eyes
this room
narrowed.
tonight is a
During
murderer.
those 30 minutes, where was everyone? That's the problem.
You sought
The house
to
was in
hide your
chaos
past,
after the
did you
earlier
not?
incident with Lady Ashworth's wine. Guests were scattered throughout the house. Geoffrey was arguing with Colonel Rutherford in
The
the
serum
library.
wasn't stable.
Several people
I let
heard raised
ambition
voices.
cloud my judgment, and now
Vivian
she's
was on the
gone.
balcony with Dr. Thornton. Lady Ashworth was in her room with her maid. Castellan had disappeared. He claims he was in the conservatory, but no one saw him there. Mrs. Vane was in the drawing room, but she admits she dozed off in her chair. Sir Edmund went to retrieve his coat from the cloakroom. It took rather longer than one might expect for such a simple task. And Marchmont says he went to the conservatory to smoke a cigar.
Nor I
Again,
you.
no one to verify.
Godspeed.
Poirot was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant, till his fingers stroking his mustache in a gesture Japp had learned to recognize as indicating deep thought. Finally, he spoke. I wish to meet these people, all of them, but not yet as the detective who questions. First, I wish to observe them in their natural habitat, as one observes the birds in the forest. Japp looked puzzled. How do you propose to do that? They all know why you're here. The moment they see you, they'll be on their guard. Ah, but that is precisely what I wish to observe. How they behave when they know they are being watched. The guilty conscience, it cannot help but reveal itself, given time and the proper circumstances. Poirot smiled, a small, satisfied smile. You will introduce me as your colleague from Belgium, an expert in matters of sudden death, who has come to assist with the medical aspects of the case. Not as the great detective, but merely as a consultant. They will think me insignificant, perhaps even foolish with my foreign ways. And when people think one is foolish, they become careless. You're a cunning devil, Poirot, Japp said with reluctant admiration. All right, I'll play along, but I warn you, Lady Ashworth is demanding results. She's already had her Member of Parliament on the telephone, and he's had the Commissioner on the telephone, and now I'm catching it from both ends. The titled classes, the 9:15 from Paddington to Bath, was known among those who travelled regularly. Come, let us as begin. A train of impeccable punctuality people now? And quiet respectability. The drawing room was a tableau precisely on schedule, carried a clientele of professional gentlemen, well-dressed ladies, unable to occasional clergymen, orders, and arrived at its destination without fuss or incident. It was, in short, the very embodiment of English railway efficiency. Their headlines screaming about the mysterious that made the events of that cold February morning all the more. Someone had attempted to maintain the fiction of normalcy by arranging for tea and sandwiches. A stout, sensible woman of 63 with a fondness for knitting and an aversion to melodrama. Lady Ashworth reclined on a chaise had boarded the train that morning with every expectation of an uneventful journey. Morning clothes could not. She had secured a window seat in a first-class carriage. Her face was arranged her belongings with methodical precision. Though, then settled in with her needlework, the after effects of strong Waverley's sedative was the compartment was otherwise empty, which suited beside her stood Vivian, looking haggard and as the train pulled away from Paddington, gathering speed through the grey London suburbs. Like Mrs. McGillicuddy hummed softly clenched behind his back and worked the needles with Sir Edmund sat in a wing chair. She was bound for Bath to visit her dear friend Jane Marple, and she looked forward to several days of pleasant conversation and the excellent scones that Jane's housekeeper prepared. The train had been travelling for perhaps 20 minutes when another train appeared on the parallel track. Mrs. Vane occupied a strategic position. For a brief moment, could observe the two trains ran side by side, their speeds perfectly matched. Castellan stood apart from the McGillicuddy, glanced gazing out into the fog, idly observing the windows of the adjacent carriages, and had been permitted to return to his hospital what duties, she saw but had been asked to return for further questioning. The blood in her veins. Marchmont was in a first-class compartment, directly level with her own, posted illuminated clearly. He had been given permission to return to his own residence, but would be summoned around a woman's throat. The woman's face was contorted in terror and agony. This her mouth open in what must have been a scream that Mrs. McGillicuddy could not hear. His expertise in matters of toxicology and at the man's wrists. He will be assisted with certain technical aspects of the investigation. His face twisted with murderous intent. Poirot bowed, tightened his grip with a little determination that seemed almost comical. Mrs. McGillicuddy watched, paralyzed with horror. I'm desolated to meet you under such tragic circumstances. As suddenly as the vision had appeared, you must not disrupt yourself. The other train pulled ahead. I'm merely here to observe, to understand the scientific details. In several moments, he handled McGillicuddy sat in stunned silence. Her knitting several pairs into her lap assessed him, her hands apparently found him wanting. Then Poirot could see the dismissal into action. She lurched to her feet and made her way down the corridor with ridiculous moustaches and his "There's been a murder," she gasped, catching the arm of a startled railway official. I don't see what there is. On the other train, I saw it with my own eyes. A man strangling a woman. Murdered by the conductor or a patient unknown named Hargraves. That's all there is to it. Many eccentric passengers in his career that regarded her with polite skepticism. There is the question of the murder, madam. The timing. Are you quite certain? The psychology of the crime. Of course I'm certain. Poirot. Do you think I imagine such things? I saw it as clearly as I see you now. You must stop the train. The police must be notified. I really don't see what that has to do with when the conductor made inquiries at the next station. He returned with disappointing news. Surely finding his killer is more important than discussing his daily express to Reading had been but madame, everything is connected. No one had
habits of a
reported
man,
anything
they
tell
amiss.
us who might know how to
All
exploit his
passengers had
vulnerabilities.
disembarked normally
For instance,
at Reading.
did he always
no
take
bodies
brandy
had
in
been
his study
found.
after dinner? No complaints had been
Always.
lodged.
Sir Edmund
Perhaps,
answered
madam,
when no one else spoke.
The conductor suggested delicately.
It was his invariable
The light
custom.
was deceptive.
A single glass
Or
of
perhaps
Napoleon
what
brandy,
you saw was
on which he would
exaggerated
sit while
in the
reviewing his
moment.
correspondence or
Mrs.
working on his
McGillicuddy
papers.
drew herself up with
And everyone
considerable
knew this
dignity.
custom.
Young
Everyone
man,
in the
neither
household,
hysterical
certainly.
nor fanciful.
And most of his close
I know
acquaintances.
what I saw. A woman
Sir
was
Edmund's
murdered
eyes
on that
narrowed
train.
slightly.
Are you
But no one
suggesting the
believed
killer
her.
knew Lord Ashworth would have
3
brandy
days
in his
later,
study
in a
last night?
comfortable sitting room
I
in Bath,
suggest nothing,
Mrs.
monsieur.
McGillicuddy
I
recounted
merely
her
gather
experience
facts,
to
like
Miss
the
Jane
squirrel
Marple.
gathers nuts for the winter.
The elderly lady listened with
Poirot
the careful
had reached the
attention she
center
gave
of the
to
room
all
and
matters
now
brought
turned
to her
slowly,
notice.
his
Her
gaze
bright
moving
blue
from
eyes,
face to face,
thoughtful beneath their fringe of white
Tell
curls.
me, was Lord
And the
Ashworth a
police?
man with enemies?
Miss Marple inquired
The
gently,
question hung
when her
in the
friend
air
had
like
finished.
smoke. For a
The
long
police were
moment,
polite,
no one
but
answered.
utterly unconvinced.
Then
Mrs.
Lady Ashworth laughed,
McGillicuddy
a brittle
replied
sound
with
that held
bitter
no
frustration.
humor. My husband
They
was a
made
powerful
inquiries,
man,
of course,
Monsieur Poirot,
but found nothing.
Powerful men
No
always
missing
have
woman
enemies.
has been
He made his
reported.
fortune
No
in
body
colonial
has been
trade.
discovered.
He rose
They as
to
good as
political
told me I'd
prominence,
imagined it all.
collected priceless
But you did not
artifacts.
imagine it.
One does not
Certainly
achieve
not.
such things
Mrs.
by being
McGillicuddy's
universally
eyes flashed.
beloved. Jane, I saw that
Millicent,
woman die.
really?
I saw her face.
Mrs. Vane
I saw his
interjected,
hands on her throat.
her voice
It
sharp
was as
with
real as you
disapproval.
sitting before me now.
The man is barely cold,
Miss
and you speak
Marple
as if he was
silent
some
for
sort
a
of
moment,
tyrant.
her fingers absently
I
stroking
speak
the
the truth,
marmalade
Clarissa.
cat that dozed in
Something
her lap.
this family has precious
Then if a
little
woman was
experience with,
indeed
it
murdered,
seems, she said slowly,
Lady Ashworth's
where is the
eyes
body?
glittered with something that might
That
have
is
been
precisely
anger,
the question
or might
that
have
has
been
tormented
tears.
me these past
You want
3
to know
days.
about enemies, monsieur.
And if a body cannot be
Ask about
found,
the
my
investors
dear
he
Elspeth,
ruined in the South
the police
African
can do
mining
very
venture.
little. Ask
They are,
about the
after all,
parliamentary
practical
rivals
men
whose
who
careers
deal
he
in
destroyed
evidence.
with whispered rumours.
She paused.
Ask
then added
about the
thoughtfully,
servants he dismissed
so
without
that there are
references for
those
the
whose
smallest
methods extend
infractions.
beyond the merely practical.
Mother,
Those who
Vivian's
understand
voice
that a
was
crime
shocked.
may be proved
Ma,
by the
how can you
application
say
of
such things?
psychology and logic.
Because they are
Even
true,
when
my
physical
dear.
evidence is
Your father was
elusive.
many things, but a
What do
saint
you
was
mean?
not among them. Miss Marple smiled.
Lady Ashworth turned her
I
gaze
mean,
to
my dear,
Poirot. That this matter
Does that
requires
shock you,
someone
monsieur?
with rather specialized
That a wife
talents.
might speak ill of
Someone
her
who
dead
can
husband?
reconstruct what happened through the
Nothing
careful
shocks
analysis of
Hercule
human
Poirot,
behavior
madame, and precise
I have seen too
deduction.
much of human nature
But
to be
who?
shocked. But I am
I'm
interested.
thinking of a gentleman of
You
my
paint a
acquaintance,
picture
of
of
a
a
Belgian
man
gentleman
might have
now
many
retired
who
and
wished
living
him
in
harm.
London. His
And
name
yet,
is Hercule
someone
Poirot.
who wished him harm, most
Mrs.
specifically,
McGillicuddy
most
frowned.
personally, chose
The
to
detective?
act last night.
But surely
in
he
this
only
house,
involves himself in
surrounded
affairs
by
of great
witnesses.
importance.
This
He
tells
involves
me
himself.
something.
Miss Marple
What does
corrected
it tell
gently.
you?
In affairs
Colonel
that
Rutherford
interest his
demanded.
remarkable
His
intellect.
military bearing making
And I
the
rather
question
think,
sound
my
like a
dear
challenge.
Elspeth,
That a murder
it tells
without
me
a
that
body,
the murderer
a
could
crime
not wait.
that appears to have left no
That there
trace
was
whatsoever,
some urgency,
would
some
interest him
pressing
very
need
much
to act now,
indeed.
despite the obvious
4
risks.
days later,
And or
at
perhaps
precisely 11
Poirot
o'clock in the
paused.
morning, his head
Mrs.
tilted
Elspeth
in that
McGillicuddy
characteristic
found
manner.
herself seated
Perhaps
in
because
an
of the
impeccably
witnesses.
appointed flat.
Perhaps the
in a
killer
modern
wanted the
building
murder to be
overlooking the
discovered
Thames.
quickly. In the midst
The
of this
sitting
gathering.
room was arranged with
That's
geometrical
absurd,
precision.
Geoffrey snapped.
Cushions
Why
aligned
would anyone
at
want
exact
that?
angles, books
That
organized
is
by
indeed the
height
question.
and color, a vase of flowers positioned
Poirot's
at the
green eyes
mathematical
fixed
center
on
of a
Geoffrey
side
with
table.
unsettling intensity.
Everything spoke
You
of
are
a
in some
mind
financial
that demanded
difficulty,
order
I
in all
understand,
things.
monsieur.
Hercule
Geoffrey's face
Poirot
flushed
himself
red.
sat opposite
I
her,
don't see
a
that my
small
private
egg-shaped
affairs are any
man with a
concern of yours.
magnificent moustache.
In a
that
murder
appeared to have been
investigation,
cultivated
monsieur,
with the
there are
same
no
meticulous
private
care
affairs.
he applied
Everything
to
is of
his
concern.
surroundings.
You owed money,
His
yes?
eyes, green,
To whom?
intelligent, and
Gaming
deeply
debts.
penetrating,
Colonel Rutherford
regarded
said before
Mrs.
Geoffrey could
Miss
respond.
McGillicuddy with
£14,000
that
to a
made
club
her
in
feel as
Mayfair,
though he could
and
read
other
every
debts
thought that had
besides,
ever passed
to
through her
less
mind.
reputable establishments.
So, madame,
You had no right to discuss
said,
my business
his
with
accent
strangers.
lending a formal
Geoffrey
precision
turned
to
on
his
the
English.
colonel furiously.
You have witnessed a
I have
murder,
every right
but
when
there
those
is no
debts
body,
represented
no
danger
missing
to this
person,
family.
no evidence
Your
that this
father was
crime
going to cut
occurred.
off your allowance,
The
wasn't
police
he?
naturally do not
He told
believe
you so just last week.
That is correct, Mr.
The
Poirot.
room fell silent.
But
All
you are
eyes
certain of
turned
what
to
you
Geoffrey, whose face had gone from
certain
red
as I have
to
ever
white.
been of anything in my life.
That's a lie,
he said,
Poirot nodded
but his
slowly,
voice lacked
his
conviction.
fingers forming a cathedral
Is it?
beneath his chin.
The Colonel's tone
Then
was
we have
impeccable.
before us
I
a
was
most
there when he
interesting
said it.
problem.
In this
A
very
murder
room,
has been committed.
He said you
Of
were a
that,
wastrel,
I think
there
there a
can be no
disappointment,
doubt. And that if
For
you
you,
didn't
madame,
settle your affairs
strike me
and
as a
show
woman
some
of excellent
responsibility
sense,
and
he
observation,
would disinherit you
but the
entirely.
murderer has contrived to
And now
dispose
he's
of all
dead.
evidence. Mrs. Vane
The body
observed
has
softly.
vanished. And you stand
There
to
is no
inherit
investigation
everything.
because
How very convenient.
officially there has been no crime.
How dare you?
Then you believe
Vivian
me.
stepped forward, but naturally,
Her eyes
madame.
blazing.
The little
My
grey
brother would
cells,
never.
He tapped his forehead significantly. Mrs. Vane's They tell me that your account has the ring of truth. My dear child, you have no idea what people are capable of without embellishment. Without brother was very desperate. This is not the testimony of a woman. Poirot held up a hand. Non, this is the testimony of a reliable witness to a terrible act. Please, mesdames et messieurs, this is not productive. Wave of relief washed over her. Will naturally be distressed by such suggestions, but you must understand that in such circumstances, I will solve it. All must be examined. He rose to his feet. You were in the library with Colonel Rutherford at the time of your father's death. But first, we must understand exactly what happened. Through gritted teeth. You will please to describe for arguing about with the utmost precision the Colonel everything you observed, every detail. We were there from 11:30 until we heard Mrs. Blackwood scream, and he must know all. And you, Colonel. And so Mrs. McGillicuddy, with Poirot occasionally interjecting quiet, I was so angry with the young fool, recounted her experience once more. Passing. She described the parallel trains, the perfect alignment turned to Vivian, the duration of the sighting. You were on the balcony with Dr. Thornton, she estimated. Vivienne, the appearance of the man, defiant, tall, dark-haired, yes, though we were discussing our future together, and most vividly disapproved the face of the woman, Dr. Thornton, blonde, perhaps 30 years old, beneath our elegantly dressed, her expression frozen in terminal, and I don't care what anyone thinks. When she had finished, Poirot was silent for several moments. This attachment, his eyes half closed. He did more than forbid it. The train from Paddington departs at 9:15. He murmured. He had connections on the board, to reading leaves at 9:20. Would destroy Richard's career. Run parallel. Continued to see him for a brief stretch between Wilston and Acton. Poirot but then observed the tracks diverge. That required courage. This gives us, Madame, or perhaps a desperation of a different kind. Murder. He opened his eyes and fixed Mrs. McGillicuddy with a penetrating stare. Something my father knew nothing about. His marriage was arranged. His children were disappointments. His life was consumed by ambition and acquisition. He cared more for his Egyptian trinkets. Her eyes were wide, but whether she actually saw me through the window, Vivienne, I cannot say. Lady Ashworth, it is of no matter. But the murderer, no real force behind the words. Did he see you? I don't believe so. Poirot had moved to examine. His attention was entirely focused on where several framed photographs stood. Excellent. Then he does not know there was a younger Lord Ashworth in military uniform standing beside another officer. Poirot began to pace the Colonel, I think, his hands clasped. He showed the photograph to Rutherford. Now we must ask ourselves the essential question. 1885. If a woman was murdered on a train, where is the body together under Gordon? The murderer had perhaps saved my life or 20 minutes before the train reached. I owed him everything. In that time, and yet last night, he must dispose of a body. You argued with his son about debts in broad daylight, without being observed by. Were you not concerned about repaying your own debt to Lord Ashworth? It seems impossible. The Colonel's face darkened. Said, "It seems repaid that debt many times over, and yet it was done. For 40 years, Madame, we know something very advised Reginald in his business affairs. He's a man of considerable ingenuity, but lately, and ruthless determination. He stopped himself. He planned this crime with care. Lately, the body did not simply vanish. He had become involved in matters that disposed of, according to a premeditated Egyptian artifacts, for instance. Poirot ceased. There were questions about how some of these pieces were acquired. I will need your assistance, Madame. Questions about bribes paid to officials. Tomorrow you will retrace your journey from protected sites. I will accompany you. I warned him we will travel on the 9:15 from Paddington. He wouldn't listen. And you will show me precisely where this murder occurred. Sir Edmund said quietly. Then Hercule Poirot, that's what this is will know where to search. On that cursed emerald. But the police have already searched. Gleamed with interest. A small smile. Please, Monsieur Poirot, tell me about this serpent's eye. The police, Madame, did not know where to look. And set down but Poirot, he knows that an enormous emerald from a moving allegedly from the treasure of Cleopatra herself. It falls, though such claims are always dubious. Track between Willesden Lord Ashworth acquired it 3 months ago. And if it fell to a dealer in Cairo, he paused. Marchmont claims the emerald was stolen from a collection he had legitimate rights to. He's been threatening. Mrs. McGillicuddy felt a chill run down her spine. And was his claim valid? You mean the body has been lying there all this time? The provenance of such artifacts not lying on the railway embankment, murky. That would have been discovered immediately. Was certainly convinced. But consider, Madame, he wrote several along the railway line. There are places where a body might fall and not be immediately visible. Bushes, perhaps. A ditch. Why wasn't I told about this? His eyes gleamed because they were business threats. A property that backs onto the railway line. Airs of exposing Lord Ashworth's methods to the press. Neglected. Not threats. A place where no one would think to look. And yet, good heavens, Poirot murmured. Mrs. Monsieur Marchmont was here last night. Indeed, Madame. He had access to the study. We begin our investigation, both financial and personal, where this unfortunate woman fell wrong. And then we will find who killed her. He left the study with you and Dr. Waverley. He rubbed his hands together with any of you could have returned. For Hercule Poirot, He does not accept that a murder can be
I went
committed
directly
with
to
such
attend to Lady Ashworth.
impunity.
Her maid can
The little
confirm
grey
I was with
cells,
her until
they
well
will
after
unravel
midnight.
this mystery.
Can
Justice will
Poirot's
be served.
tone was gentle but probing. As Mrs. McGillicuddy
might
took
a
her
maid,
leave,
loyal to her
escorted to the
mistress,
door with
say
old
what she
world
is told to
courtesy,
say, she felt for the
Lady
first time
Ashworth
since
sat
that
up
terrible
abruptly,
morning,
colour
a
flooding
sense of
her pale
hope.
cheeks.
The woman
Are you
she had
suggesting
seen
I
die
conspired
would not be
with my
forgotten
physician
to murder my husband?
Her murderer
That's
would not
outrageous.
escape.
I
Behind
suggest
her,
nothing, madame.
in his precisely
I
ordered
merely
sitting room,
observed that in this
Hercule
house,
Poirot
loyalty
stood at the
runs
window,
deep,
and gazing
people are
out
not
at the
always
grey
what
London
they seem.
skyline. For instance, his expression was thoughtful.
He turned to
His
Castellan,
magnificent
who had remained
moustache
silent
twitching
throughout the
slightly as he
exchange.
considered the problem
Monsieur
before him.
Castellan, you
A
deal
murder
in
without
antiquities
a body.
yourself, he
Yes.
murmured to himself.
You must have
But
known
there
about
is
the
always
serpent's
a body
eye somewhere.
Castellan
Where there is a
smiled.
body, a
There
slow,
was evidence.
enigmatic smile.
And where there is evidence,
Of course I knew.
he smiled.
Everyone
a
in our
smile of
small
supreme
world knew about
confidence.
it. Lord
There is
Ashworth
Hercule
made quite
Poirot.
certain of that. He liked to
The
boast
game,
of his
as they say,
acquisitions.
was afoot.
Did you also have
The
an
following
interest in
morning
acquiring
dawned
this
grey
angle?
and cold,
With a
I
thin
have an
mist
interest
hanging
in all
over
valuable
London that
artifacts,
seemed to muffle
Monsieur
all
Poirot.
sound. It's my business.
But
Mrs.
I didn't
McGillicuddy
kill Lord
arrived
Ashworth
at
for
Paddington
it, if that's
Station
what
at
you're
9
implying.
o'clock precisely.
And where
as
were
instructed,
you when Lord Ashworth
and found
died?
Hercule Poirot
In the
already waiting on the
conservatory,
platform.
as I told Inspector
He was
Japp.
dressed impeccably, in a
Admiring
dark
Lord
overcoat
Ashworth
and
carried a
orchids
silver
and
top
contemplating
walking
the
stick,
irony of a
looking
man who
more
could
like a
nurture
prosperous
such delicate
banker than a
beauty
detective
while crushing
embarking on a
everyone
murder
around him.
investigation.
You did not like Lord Ashworth.
Madame McGillicuddy.
I barely knew him.
He greeted
We
her
had
with a
business
small
dealings,
bow.
nothing more.
You are punctual.
But I'm a good judge
This
of
is
character,
excellent.
monsieur.
And I knew
Punctuality,
him for what he
it is the
was.
politeness of
A man
princes,
who
as
took
they
what
say.
he wanted without
Now,
regard
we shall
for
board
others.
this train and you will show me
And yet
exactly
you
where you
accepted
were
his
seated
invitation
and
to
exactly
dine
what
here
you
last
observed.
night.
They
Castellan's
settled into a
smile
first-class
widened.
compartment, identical
One does
to
not
the one
refuse
Mrs.
invitations
McGillicuddy
from
had
powerful
occupied
men,
on that fateful
even men one
morning.
dislikes.
Poirot insisted
Besides,
on
I was
positioning
curious
himself
about the
in the
serpent's
precise
eye.
seat she had occupied.
I wanted to see it for
then
myself.
gestured for her to sit opposite
And did
him.
you?
Now, madam,
No.
you will narrate
Lord
for me
Ashworth
the
kept it
journey
locked
as it
away.
occurred. We will
Paranoid,
time
perhaps,
everything
that
with
someone might
exactitude.
steal it.
As the
Poirot
train
turned away
pulled
from
out of
Castellan
Paddington,
and addressed the room
Mrs.
at large.
McGillicuddy found herself
So we have a
reliving
house
that
full of
morning
people,
with uncomfortable
now all
clarity.
with grievances against
Though
the dead
Poirot
man,
sat motionless,
all with opportunity,
his eyes closed,
all with secrets.
his fingers pressed together
His
in
voice
concentration.
dropped to barely above a whisper.
He appeared almost to be
And
asleep,
one of you is a
but Mrs.
murderer.
McGillicuddy knew better.
The accusation,
behind
delivered
those
so
closed
quietly,
eyelids, his
had more
remarkable
impact
mind
than
was
if
at
he had
work,
shouted it.
reconstructing the
Several
crime
people
with
shouted
methodical
uncomfortably.
precision. Lady
We are
Ashworth
approaching
reached for a
Willesden,
handkerchief,
she said, her voice
Geoffrey's
slightly
pace
unsteady.
intensified.
It was
Only
somewhere
Sir
along
Edmund
here.
remained perfectly still,
Poirot's eyes
watching
snapped
Poirot
open
with an
He
expression
leaned
that
forward,
might have been
gazing
respect
intently
or
out the window at the
wariness.
passing landscape.
You
The
speak
train
as if
ran
this
through
were
a cutting
certainty,
now, with
Sir
embankments
Edmund said
rising on
carefully.
either side.
But surely
Buildings
the killer
backed
might have been
onto
an
the railway
outsider.
line, the rear
Someone who
gardens
gained
of
entrance
houses,
to the house during the
some
confusion of the
well-maintained,
evening.
others overgrown
An
and
interesting
neglected.
theory, monsieur.
But
The
no,
other train,
the house
it
was
came
full of
alongside
guests and
approximately
servants.
here.
An outsider
Poirot
would have been
asked,
noticed,
questioned,
Yes, I believe so.
and besides, and then for
But the
perhaps
killer
10
knew Lord
seconds,
Ashworth's habits.
we ran
Knew he
parallel.
would be alone in his study.
They both watched
Knew about the
as another
brandy.
train appeared on
This
the
was
adjacent
not the
track,
work of a stranger,
heading in the same direction.
Then you're saying one of us,
For a brief moment,
one of the family,
two trains
or our
matched
close
speeds
friends,
perfectly,
is a cold-blooded
and Mrs. McGillicuddy
murderer.
could see clearly into the
Vivian's
windows of the
voice
other
trembled
carriages.
slightly.
Then,
I am
just as
saying
before,
that someone in
the
this
other train
house
pulled
had
ahead
both the
and view
means
was
and the
lost.
motive to kill Lord
There.
Ashworth. Mrs.
Whether the
McGillicuddy
blood was
exclaimed,
cold or hot,
that is
that
exactly
remains
how it
to be
happened.
determined.
Poirot
Sometimes,
nodded
mademoiselle,
slowly.
his
Murder
eyes still
is
fixed
committed
on
in
the passing
passing
scenery.
in a moment
And the
of
body,
rage or
if
desperation.
thrown from the train at that
The
moment,
method may be
would have
calculated,
fallen,
but the decision
here
itself
may come from the
he
heart
gestured toward
rather
the
than the head.
embankment, where a thick
Mrs.
tangle
Vane,
of bushes
who had been
and
listening
brambles
intently,
grew along a fence line.
spoke up.
Beyond
You
the
mentioned the
fence,
threatening.
a large property was
Monsieur
visible.
Poirot, a
The
substantial
sins
house
of the
set back
past
from the
always find
railway,
us in the
its
end.
gardens extending down to
That
meet the
sounds
tracks.
like someone seeking
Heart, we must
revenge
discover
for an
who
old
owns
wrong.
that property.
Not a crime
Poirot
of passion.
murmured. But
Ah,
first,
madame, you
we
are most
continue to
observant.
reading, just
Yes,
as the murderer
note
did.
suggests something from the past.
The remainder of the
a
journey
sin
was
as it
conducted
says.
in silence.
A betrayal, perhaps.
Poirot's mind was
Something
clearly
that has
engaged with the
festered
problem,
for years,
his brow
before
furrowed
erupting
in
into
concentration.
Poirot's
When they
gaze
reached
swept
Reading,
the room.
he consulted
Which of
briefly
you
with
has
the
known
station
Lord
master,
Ashworth the longest?
then returned to Mrs.
I have,
McGillicuddy with a thoughtful
Colonel
expression.
Rutherford said immediately. It is
Over
as I
40
suspected,
years,
as I mentioned.
the train makes no stops
And
between
in those
Paddington
40
and
years,
Reading.
did Lord
Therefore,
Ashworth commit
the murderer
sins that
had
might
approximately
return to haunt him?
35 minutes alone with his
jaw
victim
tightened.
after the deed was done.
Every man commits
Time
sins,
enough to
Monsieur
search her
Poirot.
belongings,
Reginald
to remove
was no
anything
different,
that might
but whatever
identify
wrongs
her
he may have
and to
done,
prepare
he
her
didn't
body
deserve
for
to die
disposal.
choking on poison in his own
But how
study.
could he dispose of a body
Perhaps
without
not.
being seen?
But someone
Mrs.
believed he did.
McGillicuddy protested.
Poirot
These
turned
surely
to
other
Sir Edmund.
passengers would have noticed.
You were his solicitor.
The train,
You knew his
it was not
business
full
affairs,
that morning,
his
I have
legal
ascertained this.
entanglements. And a
Was there
first-class
anyone from his
compartment.
past who might harbour
One
such
purchases
hatred?
privacy when one travels
Edmund
first class,
hesitated,
n'est-ce pas?
clearly weighing his
The corridor
professional
was likely
discretion
empty.
against the demands
The
of a
murderer
murder
chooses his
investigation.
moment with care.
There were
opens the door,
incidents
and the body
in
falls
South
onto
Africa.
the embankment.
There was a partner who
In the
claimed
fog of
Lord
that
Ashworth
morning
had
at the
defrauded
speed the
him.
train travels. The man
Who
committed
would
suicide
notice?
when his own business
By the
collapsed.
time the train
His
reaches
widow
Reading,
blamed Lord Ashworth. There is nothing to see. The widow,
the murderer
where is she now?
disembarks like any other passenger,
Dead, as far
and
as
the
I know.
perfect crime
This was 20
is
years
complete.
ago. Children?
Except that I saw it happen.
I'm
Mrs.
not
McGillicuddy
certain.
said quietly.
Perhaps. I
Precisely,
could make inquiries.
madame.
Poirot
You are the
nodded
single
slowly.
thread that will unravel
Please
his
do so.
carefully woven plan.
Old wounds. They do not
return
always
to
heal.
London on the next
Sometimes
available
they poison
train.
the next generation.
Poirot was silent
paused,
during the
his
journey,
eyes
but
distant.
Mrs.
Mama
There is
McGillicuddy
something
could
else that
sense the
troubles me about
intensity
this
of his
case.
concentration.
The incident with Lady Ashworth's
As they
wine
parted
glass.
at Paddington,
Someone put
he
cream
took
of
her
tartar
hand
into
both
her
of
drink.
his. A harmless
You have done well,
substance,
madame.
Doctor. Thornton
Now you
pointed
must
out,
return to
but
Bath and
unpleasant.
leave the matter in my hands.
Why?
I
I
will
will
investigate this
Japp
property
suggested.
that borders the railway
Someone
line.
trying to frighten her.
If the body was thrown from the
Perhaps.
train where we believe,
Or perhaps a
then it
rehearsal.
lies somewhere on
A
those
way of
grounds.
testing the
And
household's
when I find
reaction
it,
to a poisoning
I
incident,
shall find it.
to see how
Then the
alert people
investigation
were,
truly
how
begins.
quickly a
doctor would be summoned.
Mrs.
What
McGillicuddy
procedures would
departed,
be followed?
and Poirot stood on the
Poirot
platform,
looked directly
watching
at
the
Lady
crowds
Ashworth.
flow past him.
Madame,
His
can you think of
expression
anyone who
was
might wish to
grave.
frighten you?
A woman
Lady
had been
Ashworth's
murdered,
hand
her body
trembled as she
hidden,
pressed the
her
handkerchief
identity
to her lips.
concealed.
But the
I-
murderer had
There
made
was a
one
woman,
crucial error.
some years ago. He had assumed
She claimed
his
my
crime
husband
was
had promised
invisible.
to marry her before
He had
met
not
me.
counted on the
She
careful
wrote
observation
letters,
of a
terrible
sensible woman
letters,
with excellent
accusing me of
eyesight
stealing
and
him
an honest
away.
nature. But
And he had not counted on Hercule
She
Poirot.
couldn't possibly. Her name,
The
madame,
property that backed onto
Constance
the railway
Blackwood,
embankment was called
the rue
Rutherford
went utterly
Hall,
still,
and it belonged
Poirot's
to a family
eyebrows
named
rose
Crackenthorpe.
fractionally.
Poirot discovered this
The
through a
same name as your
combination of
housekeeper.
consultation with local property
sister-in-law
records and discreet
came a
inquiries
voice
at
from
the
the
nearest
doorway.
post office.
Mrs.
Where the
Blackwood
postmistress
stood there,
proved remarkably
her face pale,
forthcoming
but
about the
composed.
inhabitants of the
My
large
husband's
house.
sister.
She
Old
died
Mr.
10 years ago
Crackenthorpe
in an
lived there.
asylum, she informed
But
me.
before she went
Leaning
mad,
across the
she wrote
counter
those
with
letters,
evident relish for
hundreds
gossip.
of them,
all
all blaming
blaming
Lady
Lady
Ashworth
Ashworth
for
for ruining her life. His wife died years ago.
And you never
And
mentioned
he lives
this
there
connection
now with
when
his
you were
daughter
hired.
Emma, who keeps
Japp
house
demanded.
for him.
Lord
The
Ashworth
sons
knew.
visit occasionally,
He hired
but
me
there's
despite
been
it,
some falling out
or
in the
perhaps
family.
because of it.
Money troubles,
I
Mrs.
shouldn't wonder.
Blackwood's voice was steady.
There always is.
But her hands
Armed
gripped her
with
keys
families
so
like
tightly
that.
that her knuckles were white.
Poirot absorbed
He
this
said it pleased him
with
to have a
polite
Blackwood
interest
in his service,
then
made his way
dependent
toward
on his charity.
Rutherford Hall.
He found it
The house
amusing.
itself was substantial,
Good
but showed
God.
signs of neglect.
Colonel Rutherford
Paint
breathed.
peeling from
Reginald
the window
could be
frames,
cruel, but that's
weeds
monstrous.
growing through the gravel drive,
My brother-in-law
an air
was a
of genteel
monstrous man.
decay that spoke
Mrs.
of diminished
Blackwood said
fortunes
flatly.
and reduced
You
staff.
see,
He destroyed
the
my
grounds
husband's
were
sister,
extensive,
then mocked
running
her
down
memory
to meet
by
the
railway
railway
embankment in a wilderness
Every day
of
for
overgrown
20 years
shrubbery
I've served
and
in this
untended
house,
flower beds.
knowing what he did to Constance.
It would be. The
Poirot
revelation
reflected.
sent ripples
An
of
excellent
shock through
place
the
to conceal
assembled
a body.
company. Poirot's
The
eyes
question
never
was
left Mrs.
how to gain
Blackwood's
access
face
to
as he
search the
spoke,
property,
his voice
without
soft
arousing
but
suspicion.
penetrating. He could
And yet,
hardly
madame,
present himself at the
you
front
remained
door
in his
and announce
service.
his intention to search
20
for a
years
corpse
is a
in the
very
garden.
long time to endure
As
such
he stood
humiliation.
contemplating this problem,
Why did you stay?
a woman emerged from a
Mrs.
side entrance of
Blackwood's
the
composure
house.
cracked
So she was
slightly,
perhaps 50
revealing
years of
something
age,
hard and
dressed
bitter
in
beneath.
sensible tweeds, with
Where
a
else could I
capable,
go?
no-nonsense
I had no
air about
references
her.
before this position.
This,
no
Poirot
family to
surmised,
support me after
would
my
be
husband
Emma
died.
Crackenthorpe,
Lord Ashworth
the daughter
knew
who
that.
kept
He
house
enjoyed
for her
knowing
difficult
that.
father.
And besides, may I help
She
you?
paused,
She called
seeming to
out,
struggle with
regarding
herself.
him with polite
Besides, I wanted to
curiosity
be
rather
here
than suspicion.
to watch him.
Are you lost? Poirot approached with his most charming smile, for raising his hat with continental to catch up with him. I prayed for it every night. 1,000 pardons for this intrusion. I am Hercule Poirot, and last night myself investigating a rather delicate matter. Mrs. Blackwood, I might impose upon your kindness rose to ask a few questions, alarm evident on his face. Hercule Poirot. I must advise you to say nothing further without legal representation. The detective? Why? Good heavens, I'm only speaking you to Rutherford Hall. I'm glad he's dead. A matter of some urgency, I won't pretend otherwise. I have reason to believe that a
Mrs.
serious
Blackwood
crime
drew herself
may have been
up
committed
to her
at
full
height,
height,
and that evidence
dignity
relating to this
settling over
crime
her
may
like a
have
cloak.
fallen, as it
But
were,
if you're asking whether
onto
I
your
killed him,
property
the answer
from
is
the
no.
railway line. I didn't have to.
Emma's
God's
expression
justice found
shifted
him
from
without my
curiosity
intervention
to
concern. A convenient philosophy.
What sort of crime?
Japp muttered.
I fear
Means,
it is
motive,
murder,
and
mademoiselle.
opportunity. You had all
For a
three.
moment,
You
Emma
discovered the
simply
body.
stared at him.
You could easily have poisoned
Then
the
with
brandy
admirable
and then
composure,
found him dead. She said, "You'd
I
better
could
come
have,
inside, Mr. Poirot.
Mrs.
My father
Blackwood
is
agreed
resting, but we can
calmly.
speak in the morning But I didn't. Search
The
my rooms
interior
if you
of
wish.
Rutherford Hall
Question
matched
the
its
staff.
exterior.
I have
Nathan
nothing to
grandeur.
hide. Rooms too large
Poirot
and too
had been
numerous
listening
for the
with his
remaining
head tilted
inhabitants.
to one side,
Furniture
his
shrouded in
fingers
dust
stroking
stroking
his
his mustache.
Now
Emma
he
led him
spoke,
to a small,
and his words
more comfortable
surprised
room
everyone.
where a fire
I do not
burned
think
in the
Mrs.
grate.
Blackwood killed Lord
Now,
Ashworth, she said.
What?
Settling into a
Japp
chair
turned
and
to him
regarding
incredulously.
with intelligent eyes.
Poirot,
Please
just
explain
explain what
to
this
having
is
both
about. Motive and means.
Poirot
She
recounted,
confessed to
with
wishing
careful
him dead,
discretion, my friend.
The essentials.
That is
of
not
Mrs.
the same thing.
I, McGillicuddy's testimony.
No, the psychology is
He
wrong.
did not mention her name.
Mrs. Blackwood is a
referring
woman
to
who
her
has waited
only
20
as
years,
a reliable
who has
witness.
endured humiliation with patience
Described
and
the
dignity.
murder observed from the
Such a
parallel
woman does
train,
not suddenly
the
act on
timing,
impulse.
the location.
If she had planned to kill
And you
Lord
believe,
Ashworth, Emma
she
said
would have done
slowly,
so long ago
that the body
when
was
wound
thrown from the
fresh,
train and landed
or she would
somewhere
have
on
waited
our
longer
property.
still.
For
It
a
is a
moment,
possibility
when
I must
suspicion could not
investigate,
possibly
mademoiselle.
fall upon her.
Then you must
Then why
certainly
mention
search.
any of this?
I'll have our
Geoffrey
gardener,
demanded.
Hillman, assist
If she's
you.
innocent,
Though
why
I warn
reveal
you,
information
the grounds
that
are
makes her look
extensive,
guilty?
and much of them have been allowed
Because,
to grow
monsieur,
wild. She is tired
we
of
simply don't
secrets.
have the staff we
She's
once
tired
did.
of pretending.
Poirot
And
inclined his
perhaps
head gratefully.
Poirot's gaze
You are most
returned to Mrs.
understanding,
Blackwood.
mademoiselle.
Perhaps because she
Many
knows something
would
else,
consider such a suggestion
something she wishes to tell us, but
disagreeable.
cannot bring herself to speak directly.
Emma's expression was grim.
Mrs. Blackwood met his
Mr.
eyes,
Poirot,
and for a moment,
if a woman has been
something
murdered
passed between
and her
them,
body disposed
an
of on our
understanding,
property,
I
recognition,
consider it my duty to
then
assist
she
in
looked
finding
away.
her. I have nothing
When did
more
this
to say,
occur?
Monsieur Poirot. 8
Except
days ago,
this,
on the morning of
Lord
February
Ashworth
the 10th,
had
many secrets.
8
Things
days.
even Sir
Emma
Edmund
doesn't
doesn't
know.
Then if
Things
there is a
hidden in that
body,
study of his.
it has been lying out there
If you
all
want to
this
find
time.
his killer, look to
She
his
shuddered
secrets.
slightly, then recovered her
secrets?
composure. Japp pressed. I shall
Be
fetch Hillman
specific,
immediately.
woman.
He knows every
But
inch of the
Mrs.
grounds. Blackwood only shook her
Hillman
head. Proved to be a weathered man
I've
of
said all I
60,
can.
who received the
I've
news
already
of their
said
grim
too
task
much.
with stolid calm. She turned and
There's
left
the old
room.
long barn
Her footsteps
down by the railway
echoing down the
embankment.
corridor.
He said thoughtfully.
An uncomfortable silence
Nobody's been in
fell.
there for years.
It was broken
And there's
by
thick
Castellan,
undergrowth all along
who had
the
been
fence
watching the
line.
proceedings with
If
evident
something was thrown from the
fascination.
train,
That's where
this
it
is
would
better
most
than
likely
any
land.
theatre, he remarked.
Then that is where we shall
Secret
search.
connections, old
Poirot
grudges,
declared.
and
Mysterious
the three of them
hints.
made their way
But
through
it
the
seems to me,
overgrown
Monsieur
gardens toward the
Poirot,
railway embankment.
that you're no closer
The
to
long
identifying
barn
the
loomed
killer
ahead
than
when you
its
started.
door hanging loose on
On the
rusted
contrary,
hinges.
monsieur.
I am
Poirot's
considerably
pulse
closer.
quickened.
Already the
His
picture
instinct
begins to form
honed
in my
by
mind.
years of investigation.
But there are still pieces
told me
missing.
they were close,
Small pieces,
very close
but crucial
indeed.
ones. The long
Poirot
barn
turned
was a
to Sir
relic of
Edmund.
more prosperous times
safe in
when
Lord
Rutherford
Ashworth's
Hall
bedroom.
had maintained
You said the
horses and
serpent's eye is
carriages
still there.
and required substantial
Yes,
storage
I checked
for
this
hay
morning
in the
equipment.
presence of Inspector Japp. Now it stood empty,
The
and
emerald is
forgotten.
secure.
Its roof sagging.
I wish to see
its
it,
walls weathered,
and I wish to
a
examine
silvery
Lord
grey.
Ashworth's bedroom more
Dead
carefully.
leaves had drifted
There may
against
be
its
other secrets
foundation,
hidden there,
and the
as
small
Mrs.
windows
Blackwood
were
suggests.
opaque with grime and cobwebs.
I'll arrange it, Japp said.
Hillman
making a
pushed
note in his
open the
book.
protesting door,
Though I've
and the
already
three
had
of them
my men
stepped
go
in
through the
inside.
room.
Nothing
The
suspicious
interior was
found.
dim and musty.
Your men,
filled with the
they look with
detritus
the eyes
of
of
decades.
policemen. They
Broken
seek evidence
furniture,
of crime, rusted
I look
tools,
with different eyes.
a rotting
I seek
sacks
evidence
that
of
might once have
character,
contained
of habit,
feed or
of the small tells that reveal a
Pale
man's
light
true
filtered
nature.
through gaps in the roof,
Poirot
illuminating
addressed the room
dancing
once
motes
more.
of dust. I would ask that all of you remain available
for
for
further
further
questions,
questions.
Hillman said.
Do not
his
attempt to
voice
leave London.
echoing slightly in
The
the
murderer,
enclosed space.
you understand? Miss
He's
Emma
still
wanted
among
to
us.
have it torn
And
down,
until this
but
matter
old
is
Mr.
resolved,
Krakenthorpe wouldn't hear
everyone
of it.
must be considered
Said
a
it was
suspect.
part of the estate and must be
Even
maintained,
Lady Ashworth,
though he never provided
Vane
funds
asked
for
archly.
maintenance. Surely
Poirot
you don't suspect
moved
a
slowly
grieving
through the
widow.
barn.
His keen eyes
Poirot's
examining
smile
every
was
shadow,
enigmatic.
every heap of debris.
In matters of murder,
His
madame,
expression was
I
intent respect everyone. Focus. Even grieving widows. Emma and Hillman watched him with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. There, Lady Ashworth Poirot said suddenly, her hand flying pointing with his walking stick toward the far corner of the barn. My husband has been dead less than a day. What is that? And you accuse me of in the shadows, being insufficiently distraught beneath a pile of mouldering sacks, monsieur. And something I simply cannot believe this has happened. Something that might have been fabric, or her voice broke convincingly. Hillman stepped forward and pulled away the sack. The love match. Then he recoiled with an oath. But that
It was a
doesn't make
woman's
me a
body,
murderess.
lying on its side
No,
in an
madame,
attitude
it does
that
not.
suggested it had
But
been
it does
hastily
make you a
thrust
woman
into the
with
corner
secrets.
and covered.
And secrets, they
She
are
was
like
dressed
weeds
in
in
the
the
remnants
garden.
of what had once been
One
an
must pull
elegant
them all
traveling
up to
suit.
see what lies
Dark
beneath.
blue wool, now
Poirot
stained
bowed
and
slightly and turned to
deteriorating.
Jap.
Her blonde
Now, come,
hair,
mon ami.
matted and
Let us
discolored,
examine this bedroom
fell
and
across
its
her
precious
face.
emerald. The rest
One
of you
hand
please
was
remain
visible,
in this room
the
or in your
fingers
own
curled,
chambers,
and on one
no
finger
one is to
gleamed
enter
a
Lord
ring
Ashworth's
set with
study
what
or
appeared to be
bedroom without
diamonds.
permission.
Emma
As
gasped
they climbed
and
the
turned
stairs
away,
to the second
her
floor,
hand pressed
Jap
to her
spoke
mouth.
in a low voice.
Hillman stood
You're
frozen,
poking at them
his
deliberately,
weathered
aren't
face
you?
pale, trying
With
to
shock.
provoke a reaction.
Only
But of
Poirot
course,
remained calm.
the murderer,
though his
they believed
expression had
themselves
become
clever,
grave and
they have
sad.
planned carefully, executed
touch
precisely,
anything,
but now
he
they
said
must
quietly.
watch as Hercule Poirot
The police must be
examines their
summoned
work.
immediately. They cannot help
Miss
but worry.
Krakenthorpe,
Did I
if you would be
overlook something?
so kind as to telephone
Will he
them,
notice what others have
tell
missed?
them that
This
Hercule
worry,
Poirot
it will
has
make them
discovered
act,
a body,
and when they
requests
act, they
their
will
immediate
reveal
attention.
themselves. The
Emma
master
nodded
bedroom was
mutely
a
and hurried
sumptuous
from the
affair,
barn.
decorated in deep
Poirot
burgundies
remained,
and gold.
studying the scene with
The bed
meticulous
was a
attention.
massive four-poster.
He did not approach
We
the
still
body
rumpled
closely.
from where Lady
That
Ashworth
would be for
had
the
presumably
presumably
slept
slept
the
the night
forensic
before.
experts.
But
A
even
dressing
from a
table
distance,
held an array of
certain
perfume
details were
bottles and
apparent.
cosmetics. The woman
The
had been
wardrobe
young.
stood open,
Perhaps
revealing
30
both
years of
Lord
age.
and Lady Ashworth's
Her clothing, though
clothes.
damaged by
But
exposure
it was the
and
safe that
decomposition,
interested
had
Poirot.
been expensive and
It was
fashionable.
concealed behind a portrait
The
of
position
Lady
of the body
Ashworth
suggested
as a young bride.
it had been moved
and Sir
post-mortem,
Edmund had already
dragged or
provided
carried
the
to this
combination
location and concealed.
Inside, they
And
found
most
the usual
significantly,
contents
there
of
were
a
marks
nobleman's
on her
safe.
throat.
Important
Dark
discolorations
bonds
that confirmed
a small amount
Mrs.
of cash,
some
McGillicuddy's
jewelry,
testimony,
and
this
in a
woman
velvet
had
lined
been
box.
strangled. The serpent's
How did she
eye.
get in here?
Hillman asked
Poirot
hoarsely.
lifted the emerald carefully.
The door.
It's
holding
been
it
locked
up
for
to the light.
years.
It was
Poirot
indeed
examined the
magnificent.
door more closely.
The size of a robin's
Locked,
egg,
you say?
with a
But the
deep
lock,
green
it
color
is
that
broken.
seemed to glow from
See
within.
here.
This has been
Cut
forced,
into its
and
surface
recently,
was an intricate
the wood
pattern of
around the
scales
hasp
that gave it
shows
its name.
fresh splintering.
And in the center,
Then someone
and a
broke
lighter
in to hide the
inclusion
body.
that resembled a serpent's
Precisement.
eye. The murderer
Beautiful.
threw the body from the train
Jap
as we
breathed.
suspected.
Worth killing
It
for?
landed on the embankment.
Many
perhaps in the
things are worth
undergrowth.
killing for,
But
to
a body
those who place
lying in the
value on
open,
such things.
it would be
But
discovered
this,
quickly when the first
Poirot
railway
examined
workers
the
passed.
emerald from all angles.
So the murderer,
This is more
must
than just
return.
valuable.
This is
He
symbolic.
waits until
the
darkness,
serpent's
perhaps.
eye.
Then
The
he
eye
comes
that
to this
sees
property,
all,
as the
finds
note said.
the body where it fell,
Someone chose
and
their symbol
conceals it
carefully
here.
in this forgotten
He
barn
replaced
where
the
no one
emerald
ever
in its
comes,
box
and began a
But that
methodical
means,
search of the room, Hillman said slowly.
In the drawer of
that the
Lord
murderer
Ashworth's
knows
bedside
this
table,
property.
he found a
Knows
leather-bound
about this
journal.
barn. He flipped through
Poirot
it,
turned to
noting
regard
entries
him
about
with
those
various
penetrating
business
green eyes.
transactions, appointments,
Indeed.
social
That
obligations.
is a most interesting
But
deduction,
as he neared
Monsieur
the
Hillman.
end,
His
the
eyes
murderer
narrowed.
is familiar with Rutherford Hall
Jap,
and its grounds.
Look at this.
Perhaps
He showed
very
the
familiar
inspector an
indeed.
entry dated 3 weeks earlier.
Before
Hillman could
Lord
respond,
Ashworth writes,
voices
received
were
another
heard
letter from
outside.
CV.
Oh,
Emma
the
had
woman
returned
won't
with a
desist.
police inspector
Must take
and 2
measures.
constables. And
The
here,
inspector,
a week later,
a
solid man named Craddock
spoke with
regarded
Waverley about the
Poirot
problem.
with a mixture of
He
respect
suggests a
and
solution
exasperation.
that would be
Mr.
permanent.
Poirot, I might have
CV,
known you'd
that
be
could be
involved in
Clarissa
something
Vane.
irregular.
Jap
You
said.
found a body,
But
I
what
understand,
problem
would require a
More
permanent
than
solution.
that, Inspector.
And what role
I
would
found
Dr.
the victim
Waverley
of a
play?
murder that was witnessed but
Questions
not believed.
most pertinent.
A murder that occurred
Poirot
8 days
continued
ago on
reading.
the 9:20 express from
And here,
Paddington to Reading.
Just 2 days
The
before
woman
his
on the
death,
train.
Geoffrey
Craddock's
is
expression
impossible.
shifted to
The
one of
debts
surprise.
grow worse.
We made
Colonel
inquiries
says I must
about
be
that
firm.
report.
But if I cut
Found
him off
nothing.
entirely,
He'll be
because you
ruined.
did not know where to
Perhaps
look,
that's what he
but
deserves.
now, maintenance,
Perhaps that's
we
what
have
we
our
all
victim.
deserve.
And with a
Dark
victim
thoughts for a man
inspector,
about to be
we may
murdered.
begin to
Jap
uncover
observed.
her identity,
Yes.
her connections,
A man who
and
sensed,
ultimately
perhaps, her murderer.
that his sins were catching up with him.
Craddock nodded grimly
Poirot
and
closed the
directed his
journal
men to
thoughtfully.
secure the scene.
We must speak with Dr.
As the
Waverley
police went
again.
about their work,
And with Mrs.
Poirot
Vane
stood apart.
There
His
is something
mind here
already
we
racing
are not
ahead to
seeing.
the next phase of the investigation.
They found
Dr. Waverley
woman
in the morning
had been
room,
murdered.
writing what
Her
appeared to
body
be medical
had been
notes.
found.
He
Now
looked
the
up
real
as they
work would
entered.
begin.
His professional
The
smile
identification
in
of the
place,
body proved proved more difficult than anticipated. How may I assist you? The woman carried no purse, doctor, no identification. You were Lord Ashworth's personal physician. Nothing that might reveal her name or origins. Nearly 15 years. Her clothing labels had been carefully removed, and the jewelry she wore, the diamond Lord Ashworth and a gold bracelet, bore no problems that might require a permanent solution. Even her physical features, though still discernible. I'm afraid I don't understand your question. Exposure. Poirot produced no missing person, read the relevant passage aloud. The doctor's face, it is as I suspected. That entry,
Poirot said to Inspector
you must
Craddock
understand,
2 days later,
it's
as
not
they
what it
sat in
sounds
the
like.
inspector's office reviewing
Lord
the
Ashworth
meagre
was
facts.
concerned about Mrs.
The
Vane.
murderer,
She has
been
been
making
making
herself
herself
a nuisance.
He has removed every trace of her identity, making demands
This was
on
not
Lady
a crime of
Ashworth's
passion,
time and
Inspector.
attention.
This
Was
was
he
planned,
asked me if there was any
calculated,
medical reason
deliberate.
she might be behaving so
Craddock
obsessively.
consulted his notes with
I
a frown.
suggested that she might
The
be
medical
suffering from a
examiner
form of
confirmed
strangulation as the cause
and
of
the
treatment
death
at a rest
time of
facility
death
might be
consistent with the
beneficial.
morning of February 10th.
That's all I meant by
And the
a
woman was
permanent
approximately
solution.
30 years of age,
Permanent in
well
the sense
nourished,
that proper
in good
treatment
health
might cure
prior
her
to her
condition
death.
permanently. She had given
A
birth
rest
at least
facility.
once. Poirot
There are
repeated
the
softly.
telltale marks.
By which you
And
mean
a
something
doctor.
else. An asylum.
He
paused significantly. Waverley shifted
She was
uncomfortably.
pregnant.
That's
Approximately
approximately
3
3
months.
months. I was
Poirot's
thinking of one of the
eyes
modern
narrowed.
sanatoriums,
Indeed.
where nervous
That
disorders
is most
are treated
interesting.
with the latest methods.
A woman expecting a child.
Mrs. Vane
murdered
has
on
been
a train.
difficult.
There is passion here,
Always
after all,
prying into
Inspector,
family
beneath
matters,
the careful planning.
spreading gossip,
A crime of
making Lady
desperation,
Ashworth's
perhaps.
life uncomfortable. What about the connection
Lord
to
Ashworth
Rutherford
felt
Hall?
something needed to be
Craddock
done.
asked. You
And
said
Mrs.
the murderer
Vane,
must know
was
the
she
property.
aware of these plans?
Without doubt, I don't believe
Consider
so.
the facts.
It was merely a
The body
discussion.
falls from the train
Nothing had
onto
been
the
decided.
embankment. The murderer
But Waverley's
cannot leave it
eyes
there to
didn't
be
quite
discovered.
meet Poirot's as he spoke.
But how does he know of the
I
long
see.
barn?
How
And
does
tell
he
me,
know
Doctor,
it is abandoned?
in your
forgotten,
professional
the
capacity,
perfect hiding
did
place?
you have access to
No, he
cyanide?
must be familiar with the property.
The question
must have
hung in
access
the air
to it
like a
or
blade.
knowledge of its layout.
Then
Waverley's composure
we should
slipped
investigate
further.
the Krakenthorpe family.
Yes,
Most
in my
certainly.
laboratory.
Tell me what you have learned
Cyanide
of them.
compounds are used in
Craddock
certain medical
consulted another
preparations,
file.
but my supplies
Old
are carefully
Josiah
monitored.
Krakenthorpe
Locked
is
away.
83, a widower.
I would know
Reportedly
immediately
very
if
wealthy,
any were
but
missing.
extremely miserly.
Would you?
He has 4
Perhaps we should
surviving
verify
children.
that.
Inspector
The eldest
Jack,
son,
if you would
Edmund,
arrange
was
to have
killed in
Dr.
the war.
Waverley's laboratory
The second
examined,
son, Cedric,
now
is
see
52.
here.
Lives
Waverley
in London,
protested,
works as an
rising
art
from his
dealer.
chair.
Not very
You can't
successfully, by
seriously
all
suspect
accounts.
me.
I've
The
been
third
the Ashworth
son,
family
Harold,
physician for
is
years.
49.
I had no
A
reason
businessman
to want Lord
in the
Ashworth
city,
dead. Married with 2
Didn't
children. You a
The
physician
fourth
who
child
serves a
is
wealthy
Alfred,
family is well
45,
compensated, I imagine.
unmarried.
Bit of
But
a
a
black
physician
sheep.
who helps that
He
family
emigrated to
dispose of
Australia years
inconvenient
ago,
people
but returned to
through
England
commitments
about 6
to
months
asylums,
ago, for instance.
And finally,
Such a
there's the
physician
daughter,
becomes indispensable,
Emma, who we've met.
and an indispensable
She's 47,
man might become
never married,
dangerous when he
lives
knows
at
too
the
many
Hall
secrets.
and cares for her father.
That's absurd. And the old man's
But there was
will? Fear in Waverley's eyes
Ah,
now.
there's
Fear
the
in
interesting
something
part.
else. Josiah
Calculation,
Krakenthorpe
perhaps.
made his fortune in railways.
Is it?
Appropriate,
Or perhaps
given
the
our
opposite was
circumstances.
true.
And he's
Perhaps
sitting on
Lord
a
Ashworth
considerable
had become
estate.
dangerous to you.
But he's one of
Perhaps
those
he knew
difficult
something
old
about
men
your
who
professional
uses his
conduct
money to
that
control
would
his
ruin you
children
if it became known.
None of them receive adequate
Before
allowances.
Waverley could
They're
respond,
all waiting for him
a
to
commotion
die so they
erupted
can
from the
inherit.
floor below.
The will
Raised
divides
voices,
the estate equally
a crash,
among the surviving
then
children.
Vivienne's voice.
Poirot
Sharp with
stapled
alarm.
his fingers
Stop
beneath
him!
his chin.
Someone stop him!
So each child
Poirot
has a
and
financial
Jack
motive
rushed
to
to the
preserve their
stairs.
share of the inheritance.
In the entrance
If
hall.
one of them were to
And
die
they
before
found the old
Geoffrey
man
struggling,
their
their 2
portion
constables
would be
who were
divided
attending
among
to
the
restrain him.
survivors. His
Say, and
face
if one
was
of them had
wild,
contracted a
desperate.
marriage,
Then
then
in
in
his
his
produce
hand
an heir.
he clutched a small
You think the
pistol.
dead woman was
Let
married
me
to one
go,
of the
he
Krakenthorpe
shouted.
sons?
I have to get out of this house.
It is a possibility
I can't stay
that
here
bears
another moment.
investigation.
Geoffrey,
A secret
don't
marriage,
be a fool.
perhaps.
An
Colonel
unsuitable
Rutherford
match
appeared
that the
from the
family would
library,
oppose.
his military bearing
And if
suddenly
there is a
useful as he
child,
approached the
or a
young
child
man
with calm
expected,
authority,
then that
put
complicates
down the
the
weapon.
inheritance
Whatever
considerably.
trouble you're in, running
Craddock
will only
nodded
make it
slowly.
worse. You don't
need to
understand.
question all of them.
None of you understand.
Find out their movements on the
Geoffrey's
morning of
hand
February
trembled,
10th.
the pistol wavering.
Indeed.
Father's death.
But carefully,
It's all my
Inspector.
fault. If I
Our
hadn't,
murderer
if I'd
is
just
clever and ruthless.
Geoffrey, he has already
Lady
killed
Ashworth
once to
stood at
protect
the
his
top of the
interests.
stairs, her face
We must not
ashen.
alert him that we are closing
What are you
in.
saying?
I
That
killed
evening,
him, Mother.
Poirot
God help me.
returned to Rutherford Hall.
I killed him. Emma
confession
Krakenthorpe received
dropped
him in the
into the
drawing room,
silence like a
her
stone
face
into
drawn with
still
strain.
water.
And
For
the
a
discovery
moment,
of the body
no
had
one
clearly
moved.
affected her deeply.
Then Japp stepped forward
Mr.
carefully.
Poirot, his
Have the
voice
police
professionally
identified the
calm.
poor woman?
Mr.
Not yet,
Ashworth,
mademoiselle.
I must caution
That is
you
partly
that
why
anything
I've
you say
returned.
may be used in
I
evidence
must ask you
against
some questions about your
Are
family.
you confessing to the murder of your father?
Emma's expression became guarded.
Geoffrey's shoulders
My
sagged.
family?
The pistol slipping from his nerveless fingers
I think
to
nothing
clatter
yet,
on the marble
mademoiselle.
floor. But the
Yes.
body was concealed on
No.
your property by someone
I
who
don't
knew of
know.
the long barn. But it's because of me
It is
that
necessary.
he's dead to eliminate
The debts,
possibilities.
the
threats. I brought
I
danger
see.
to this house,
Emma
and now
clasped
he's paid
her
the
hands
price for
tightly
my
in her lap.
foolishness. What do you wish to know?
Poirot had been watching
Your
this
brothers,
scene with
mademoiselle.
intense interest.
Tell me about
his
them,
green eyes,
their
missing
circumstances,
nothing.
their characters.
Now he spoke.
Their
His
relationships.
voice was surprisingly gentle.
Emma hesitated.
Monsieur
Loyalty
Geoffrey,
warring with
you did not
honesty.
kill your father.
Finally.
But
she sighed.
You feel guilty, yes.
My brothers are not
your
bad
debts
men,
troubled
Mr.
him.
Poirot.
Your choices
But they are
disappointed
weak
him.
men.
But guilt
They have lived
is
too
not
long
murder.
under our father's
If you had
thumb.
poisoned your
You
father's
depended on his
brandy,
money,
you would
waiting
not
for
be
him
here
to
now,
die.
making dramatic
It has
confessions and waving
corroded
firearms
in different
about.
ways.
You would be silent,
Careful,
acting the part
Cedric
of the
fancies
grieving
himself
son.
an artist and
This,
an intellectual.
But he has no real talent of
disheveled
discipline.
state.
This
He lives
is the
beyond
behavior
his
of a
means
young
and is
man
constantly
overwhelmed
in
by
debt.
emotion, not the
Emma
calculation
continued,
of a murderer.
her voice quiet but
Then
steady.
why did you try to flee?
Harold is the
Japp
respectable
demanded.
one, or so he likes to
Jeffrey
appear.
slumped against the wall.
He works in the
looking
city,
suddenly very
has a
young
wife and
very
children,
lost.
maintains the facade
My
of
creditors.
success.
They're
But I know
dangerous
he has
men,
made poor
Inspector.
investments.
When they
He
learn
comes
about
to
father's
father
death,
regularly,
they'll
asking
come
for
me.
loans that never
They'll
seem
want
to be
their money
repaid.
immediately, and I don't
And
have
Alfred,
I was
she
trying to get
paused,
to my club,
her expression
to
troubled.
hide, to buy myself
Alfred is
time
the
to
most
think.
difficult to understand.
The gaming
He left
debts.
for Australia
Colonel
20
Rutherford
years
said
ago
heavily.
after some scandal
I
father
warned you,
never
boy.
fully explained.
I warned your father.
When he
These
returned
criminal
6 months
elements
ago,
don't play by
he was
society's
different.
rules.
Harder. Poirot's
secretive.
head tilted sharply. He stays in London most
Criminal
of the time.
elements.
Visits
Please,
father
Colonel,
occasionally.
be more specific.
But never explains
Who
what
exactly
he
does
or
Monsieur
how he
Jeffrey
supports
owe
himself.
money to? A
Poirot
man
absorbed
named
this
Vincent
information
Crane
with careful attention.
runs a private gaming
on the morning of
establishment
February
in Soho.
10th, but he's
Do you
more
know
than
where
just
your
a card
brothers
shop.
were?
He's connected
Cedric
to some
was
very
here,
unsavory
actually.
characters.
He'd come down the
Extortion,
evening before
blackmail,
to ask father
possibly
for money.
worse, the usual pattern.
And this Vincent
Harold
Crane,
was presumably
he
in
knew
London
about Lord
at his
Ashworth's
office.
wealth.
Alfred,
Of
I
course
have no
he did.
idea. That's why
As
he
I said,
extended
he
Jeffrey
comes and
so
goes
much
without
credit.
explanation.
Poirot's eyes
And you,
gleamed
mademoiselle,
with sudden interest.
You were here that morning.
Then perhaps we must consider
Yes,
another
as always.
possibility. I rarely
That
leave
Lord
the hall.
Ashworth was killed not
Someone
for
must
personal
manage the
reasons,
household and attend
but
to
for
father's
financial
needs.
ones.
That
Someone
no
sought to
bitterness
pressure
in her
Monsieur
voice,
Jeffrey into
only
paying his
resignation
debts by removing the
Your
one
father,
obstacle to his
he's very
inheritance.
wealthy. He
That's
controls
ridiculous.
considerable assets,
Jeffrey
yes.
said,
but his
but
voice
he dispenses
lacked
money
conviction.
grudgingly,
Even for
Crane would have
necessities.
no way of getting into
He
this
believes
house,
it keeps
of
us
poisoning
dependent.
father's drink.
And keeps us attentive.
He wasn't at the dinner
He's
party.
probably right.
No, but
She
he
met
might have had an
Poirot's
agent who
eyes
was
directly.
someone who
You're
moves in
thinking
both
about
worlds,
the inheritance,
high
aren't you?
society and the criminal
You're wondering if
underworld.
one of my brothers killed
Someone
that
who
woman
deals
to
in
protect
valuable
their share.
objects and knows how to acquire
It is a
them
theory
through
that must be considered.
irregular means. Then you should know something
Poirot's
else,
gaze
Mr. Poirot.
swept the assembled company.
2 years ago,
Monsieur
father had
Castellan,
his solicitor
for
draw
instance.
up a new provision to his will.
Castellan
if any
had
of his
appeared in
children
the
were to
doorway
marry
of the drawing
or
room,
produce a child
attracted by
after
the
the will
commotion.
was made,
His
that
expression
child
remained
would be
impassive,
entitled to a share
but
of
something
the estate
flickered in
equal
his
to what
blue
each of
eyes.
father's children
An interesting
receives.
theory, Monsieur
He did it to
Poirot,
discourage
but
what he called
entirely without
fortune
foundation.
hunters.
I've
He
never
was
heard of
convinced
this
that people would
Crane,
marry us
and
only
I
for his
certainly have
money.
no involvement in anything
Poirot's
criminal.
eyebrows rose.
No. That is most significant.
And yet your
information,
business requires
mademoiselle.
you to deal with
So if
tomb
one of your
robbers,
brothers
black
had
market
contracted a
antiquities
secret marriage,
dealers,
and his
men
wife
who
was
steal from
expecting
protected
protected
archaeological
that
sites,
child would
you
inherit
move
a
in
fifth
circles
father's
where
estate,
the law is
reducing what each of us
flexible.
receives.
For
There's a
someone
difference
desperate
between
for
vending
money,
antiquities
that would be a
regulations
powerful
and
motive
committing
for
murder.
murder.
Castellan
Yet you tell me
replied
this,
coolly.
knowing it casts
Besides,
suspicion
what
on your
would I
brothers.
gain?
If
Emma's
young Jeffrey
expression was
inherits
weary,
and pays
but
his
resolute.
debts,
I received
Mr.
nothing.
Poirot, a woman
Unless
has
you
been
murdered
promised a
and her
share
body
of those
hidden on
debts,
our property,
or unless you had another
the motive
motive
of my
entirely,
brothers is
the
responsible.
serpent's eye,
He must
for
face
instance.
justice. With Lord
I will not
Ashworth
protect
dead
a
and the
murderer,
family in
even if
chaos.
he is my own blood.
It might be easier to acquire such a
Poirot
treasure.
regarded her with approval.
The emerald is in the
You
safe.
are a woman of
You
integrity,
said so
Mademoiselle
yourself.
Krakenthorpe.
For now.
That is rare, but who knows what might happen in the confusion following a murder. Things go missing, evidence disappears, a skilled thief might find opportunities. Castellan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You have a vivid imagination, monsieur. But imagination is not proof. Before Poirot could respond, Mrs. Vane emerged from the drawing room, her face flushed with indignation. If we're discussing criminal connections, perhaps we should discuss Dr. Waverley's relationship with certain pharmaceutical suppliers. I happen to know that he's been purchasing substances in quantities far exceeding what a normal practice would require. That's a lie, Waverley protested. My pharmaceutical purchases are entirely legitimate and properly documented. Are they? Then perhaps you can explain why I saw you just last month, at a meeting with a man in Limehouse who is known to deal in
He
illegal
threatened
drugs.
me.
I was visiting a charity hospital
I
in
cannot
the
let
area,
this continue.
and I saw you quite clearly. Waverley's face went from pale to red. You were spying on me. I was observing what happens in my city, and what I observed was highly suspicious. I mentioned it to Reginald, of course. He said he would look into it.
You told Lord Ashworth. Waverley's voice was strangled. You had no right. I had every right. If you're engaging in illegal activities while treating this family, they deserve to know. Mrs. Vane turned to Poirot triumphantly. There's your motive, monsieur. Reginald was going to expose the good doctor, ruin his reputation, possibly have him arrested. So Waverley poisoned him first. This is madness. Waverley looked around wildly. Clarissa, you've gone too far this time. Lady Ashworth had descended the stairs during this exchange, moving like a sleepwalker. Now she spoke, her voice flat and emotionless. Is that what you call it, Clarissa? Loyalty? Or is it possession? You've never forgiven me for marrying Reginald, have you? You wanted him for yourself all those years ago, and when he chose me instead, you've spent every day since trying to insert yourself into our lives, to control me, to make me dependent on you. Millicent. Mrs. Vane looked genuinely shocked. How can you say such things? I've been your truest friend. You've been my warden, my
Constance
spy.
wants me hanged.
Reporting everything I do back to... Lady Ashworth stopped abruptly, her hand flying to her mouth. Back to whom, madame? Poirot asked softly. Who was Mrs. Vane reporting to? The silence stretched out, taut as a wire. Then Lady Ashworth's composure finally shattered completely. To Theodore Marchmont, she whispered. Clarissa is his sister. They've been working together for years, trying to find evidence of Reginald's illegal antiquities dealings. They wanted to destroy him, to take everything he'd acquired through what they considered theft.
This city
The
runs on
revelation sent
smoke and
shockwaves through
mirrors,
the room.
Inspector.
Mrs. Vane's
And yet,
face had gone white.
The truth has a
but
way
she
of
didn't
cutting
deny
through
it.
the haze.
Half-sister, she said finally.
Take a
The
good
sheriff,
look.
father. And yes,
Every last
Theodore and
one of
I have
them
been
is a
investigating your
masterpiece
husband's
of
criminal
forgery.
activities. He's been
So,
looting
Mr.
Egypt's
Marsden,
treasures for years.
Let us discuss the
bribing
crimson
officials,
letter.
falsifying provenance documents. Someone had to stop him. So you killed him, Jap said. No. Mrs. Vane met his gaze steadily. I wanted him exposed, humiliated, imprisoned. But I didn't want him dead. Dead, he becomes a martyr. Alive and disgraced, he becomes a cautionary tale. Poirot had been listening with his characteristic stillness, but now he moved
I swear
forward,
I didn't
his
mean
steps
to do it.
precise
It was an
and
accident,
measured.
you must believe me.
He positioned himself in the center of the hall where he could see everyone assembled, on the stairs, in doorways, clustered near the walls like actors awaiting their cue. Mesdames et messieurs, we have arrived at a most interesting point in our investigation. We have confessions of guilt that are not truly confessions. We have motives in abundance, financial desperation, professional ruin, old grudges, new threats. We have a house full of people who hated the dead man, each with reasons sufficient to wish him dead. He paused, his green eyes sweeping across the assembled faces. And yet, I tell you now, I do not believe any of you killed Lord Ashworth.
Mon Dieu.
The statement
Lady
was met
Constance's
with stunned
dress.
silence. Even
The
Jack
killer must
looked
have torn
bewildered.
it during the struggle.
Poirot, what are you talking about? The man was poisoned. Someone in this house put cyanide in his brandy. Did they? Or did Lord
You think
Ashworth
you know
put
the
it there
truth,
himself?
But you don't. I
The
won't
words
let you
fell
ruin
like a
me based on
thunderbolt.
speculation. I
Lady
am an
Ashworth
innocent
swayed on the
man.
stairs, and Vivian rushed to support her. Geoffrey stared at Poirot as if he had lost his mind. Suicide. Colonel
You
Rutherford's
see, I
voice
couldn't let
was
them
harsh.
find it.
Impossible.
I
Reginald
burned the
would never...
secondary letter
Would he
myself.
not? Consider, if you please, the evidence.
Honor.
A
Sir
man
Roderick
surrounded by enemies,
can be a
all
heavy
his secrets
chain.
closing in on him from every direction, his son's debts attracting dangerous criminals, his physician's illegal activities about to be exposed, and with them, Lord Ashworth's own knowledge of those activities. Mrs. Vane and her half-brother building a case against him that would see him imprisoned. His wife, who never loved
You should
him,
never have come back
counting
here.
the
You know
days
too
until
much.
she might be free.
Please, let me explain.
His
It
daughter,
wasn't my
in
fault.
love with a man
She's
he
lying.
despised.
Get rid of
His
her.
business rival, threatening
afraid
legal
Philip is a
action
married
that would
man,
reveal
Lady
all his
Constance.
methods of acquisition.
He committed bigamy when he married your
Poirot's
sister.
voice was soft but relentless. And more than this, there is the guilt. The journal entries speak of it. Perhaps that's what we all deserve. A man who has lived by taking from others, who has destroyed careers and lives without remorse, might finally look in the mirror and see a monster staring back. But the note, Sir Edmund interjected, the threatening note about sins and judgment, that couldn't have been written by Lord Ashworth himself. Could it not? Who better to judge Lord Ashworth's sins than Lord Ashworth himself? The handwriting was disguised. We noted that it appeared to be written with the left hand by a right-handed person. But what if it was written with the right hand by a right-handed person who was deliberately disguising their writing? What if Lord Ashworth wrote that note to himself, a final acknowledgement of his own guilt? Dr. Waverley stepped forward, his professional instincts overcoming his earlier defensiveness. But Monsieur Poirot, the psychology is all wrong. Suicide by cyanide is extraordinarily painful. Though it's not the method a man would choose if he simply wanted to end his life. There are easier ways, less agonizing ways. Ah, doctor, but what if the pain was the point? What if Lord Ashworth felt he deserved to suffer? Cyanide, it is the poison of spies and traitors, is it not? The poison of those who betray their country, their principles, their very souls. Perhaps Lord Ashworth saw himself as such a traitor and chose his method accordingly. This is absurd, Mrs. Vane said firmly. Reginald Ashworth was many things, but self-reflective was not among them. He felt no guilt for his actions. He gloried in them. Did he? Or did he simply present that face to the world while something else festered within? Consider the incident with Lady Ashworth's wine. What if that was not an attempt to poison her, but rather Lord Ashworth's test run? A way to see how the household would react to a poisoning, to ensure that when he took the real poison later that evening, the chaos would provide cover for what he intended to appear as murder. Lady Ashworth's voice was barely audible. He hated me, Monsieur Poirot. Why would he care about providing me with an alibi for his death? Perhaps, madame, because in his own twisted way, he still felt something.
We have to get the letters before he
Perhaps
does.
he wanted to ensure that you, at least, would not be blamed. Or perhaps Poirot's voice grew even softer. Perhaps I am entirely wrong, and Lord Ashworth was indeed murdered by one of you. The sudden reversal caught everyone off guard. Japp sputtered, "Now see here, Poirot, you can't just..." "I can, mon ami, because the truth is this. I do not yet know if this was murder
The killer,
or
you
suicide.
see, understands
Both
the
scenarios
psychology
fit
of the
the
tea
evidence.
ceremony.
So both
They
are
knew precisely
psychologically
when the
plausible.
distraction would occur.
And that, mes amis, is precisely the problem. Poirot's eyes grew hard. Someone in this house is very clever. They have created a situation where murder and suicide are indistinguishable, where everyone has motive, where the evidence points in every direction and no direction at all. He began to pace slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his
here,
voice taking on a rhythmic,
The dates do
almost
not
hypnotic
align.
quality.
Thomas
Let us
moved
consider
away
what we
shortly
know with
after his
certainty.
sister's death.
Lord Ashworth died between 11:30 and midnight, alone in his study. The poison was in his brandy glass. The study door was unlocked, but closed. The windows were locked from inside. No one admits to entering the study during that time period. These are facts. Poirot stopped pacing and turned to face them. But now let us consider what we assume.
But
We
why would he
assume the
leave the
poison
window
was
open,
placed
Miss
in the
Marple?
brandy by someone
Perhaps
else.
because he intended
But
for us
what
to
if
believe
Lord
he
Ashworth
entered that
poured
way,
his own
Inspector.
poison?
That-
We assume the threatening note was written by his killer. But what if he wrote it himself? We assume he had no reason to take his own life. But what if the weight of his sins had finally become unbearable? You're going in circles,
So
Geoffrey
the
said
great Poirot
impatiently.
finally shows
Either he
his
killed
true
himself,
colours.
or someone killed
I
him.
presume you found what
Which
you were
is it?
looking for in my absence.
Ah, but Monsieur
You
Geoffrey,
see,
that
Inspector,
is not quite
the
the right
real
question.
nephew died
The
years
right
ago.
question is,
This
who
man
benefits
is
from
an
us not
imposter
knowing the answer?
and a killer.
Poirot's gaze swept the room. If this was suicide made to look like murder, then someone in this room helped create that illusion. If this
One
was
of you in
murder
this
made to
room
look like
tonight
suicide,
is a murderer.
then someone in this room is a very clever killer indeed. Sir Edmund cleared his throat.
You sought to
Come,
hide your
Monsieur Poirot,
past, did you
as
not?
the family's solicitor, I must point out that this distinction has significant legal implications.
There's no use
If Lord
denying it
Ashworth
now.
committed
The
suicide,
serum wasn't
his
stable.
life insurance policies
I let
are
ambition
void.
cloud my
The
judgment.
estate
Now
would
she's
suffer
gone.
considerable financial loss. How much? Japp asked sharply. £50,000. A collective gasp ran through the assembly. That was an enormous sum, enough to restore the family's finances, pay Geoffrey's debts, provide dowries for Vivian, secure Lady Ashworth's future. And who would know about these policies? Poirot asked. I would, naturally. And Lord Ashworth himself.
Godspeed.
I mentioned them to him just last week when we were reviewing his affairs. Sir Edmund's face had gone pale. You're not suggesting that we conspired to conceal a suicide? I suggest nothing. I merely observe. £50,000 is a powerful motive for many things. Poirot turned to Lady Ashworth. Madame, your husband's death, does it grieve you? The question was brutal in its directness. Lady Ashworth flinched as if struck. What kind of question is that? An honest one, which deserves an honest answer. She met his gaze, and something in her seemed to harden. No, I'm not grieved. I'm relieved. For 23 years, I have been married to a man I despised, a man who married me for my family's connections and treated me as another acquisition in his collection. I stayed because I had no choice. Divorce would have meant scandal and poverty, but now I am free, and I will not pretend otherwise. Mother, Vivian's voice was shocked. No, darling, I'm tired of pretending. Your father was a cruel, a grasping man who cared for nothing but his own advancement. If someone murdered him, I hope they escaped justice, because justice was served the moment he died. The raw honesty of the statement left everyone momentarily speechless. Then Mrs. Vane spoke, her voice oddly gentle. Millicent, you shouldn't say such things. Not now. Not here. Why not? Because it sounds like guilt. Very well, then I'm guilty. Guilty of being glad he's dead. But I didn't kill him, Clarissa. I didn't have to. God, fate, his own conscience. Something finally caught up with Reginald Ashworth, and I'm simply grateful it happened before I died myself. Poirot had been watching this exchange with keen interest. Now he spoke again, his tone thoughtful.
The seal is most
There
peculiar.
is one other possibility we have
A
not yet
forgery,
considered.
perhaps, or
What if
merely
Lord
a clever
Ashworth's death was
distraction.
neither murder nor suicide, but an accident? An accident? Japp scoffed. How does one accidentally drink cyanide? Consider, mon ami. Lord Ashworth collected antiquities. Some of these artifacts might have been treated with preservatives, including compounds containing cyanide. What if he was examining something, handling it, and then picked up his brandy glass without washing his hands? What if the poison was transferred inadvertently? Dr. Thornton, who had returned
Sir
and
Edmund
been
Phelan's
standing
death.
quietly in the doorway,
The more I examine the
spoke
facts,
up.
the deeper the shadows
That's
seem to grow.
theoretically possible,
It is a mystery
though
wrapped in
unlikely.
a shroud.
The
We
concentration would
depart
have to
for
be quite
Berkshire
high,
immediately.
and he would have
See to
noticed
the
the
luggage
bitter
yourself,
taste
George.
immediately.
I want no mistakes.
Unless,
This case is far
Poirot
too
said
important.
slowly, unless the brandy itself was already bitter for some other reason, or unless something else had been added to it first, something harmless but unpleasant, that would mask the taste of cyanide. His eyes suddenly fixed on the empty glass in his mind's eye, seeing it as it had been on the desk. The cream of tartar in Lady Ashworth's wine. It was not a warning or a test run. It was a rehearsal of taste. Someone wanted to know. If a drink tasted bitter, would the victim spit it out immediately or swallow it? But Lady Ashworth did spit it out, Vivian pointed out. Exactly so. Which means the plan had to be adjusted. The cyanide had to be added in sufficient quantity that even a small sip, even a few drops on the lips, would be fatal. No chance for the victim to spit it out and survive. The logic was inexorable, and Poirot's voice grew harder as he continued. This tells us something crucial about our murderer. They are methodical. They plan carefully. They test their methods, and they adapt when their first attempt does not go as expected. He paused, letting the words sink in. This is not a crime of passion. This is not impulse or desperation. This is calculated, cold-blooded murder. But who? Lady Ashworth's voice was barely a whisper. Who among us is capable of such calculation? That, madame, is what we must determine. Let us review what happened yesterday evening with fresh eyes. Poirot began to pace again, his voice taking on a narrative quality. The dinner party proceeds. During the fish course, Lady Ashworth's wine is tampered with. This creates confusion, concern, draws everyone's attention. In that confusion, who moved about the house? Who had opportunity to access Lord Ashworth's study and prepare the poisoned brandy? Everyone, Japp said glumly. The whole household was in an uproar. Servants running to and fro, guests moving between rooms, people going to fetch doctors and investigate the kitchen.
You must help
Precisely. Which means our killer chose that moment
The
deliberately.
document was stolen
The
3
cream of
weeks
tartar
ago.
incident was
A
not a
letter
failed murder
written by
attempt.
my late husband.
It was a distraction, a way to create chaos that would provide
A
cover
letter
for the real
written by your
crime.
husband?
Poirot stopped before the grandfather clock in the hall, studying it as if it held
The
secrets.
letter was kept in a safe
And after
in
dinner,
the library.
Lord Ashworth retires to his study with 3 men, Sir Edmund, Dr. Waverley, and Monsieur Marchmont. They discuss
Devastating
business.
would be a more
They leave
accurate
together at
word.
11:30. Lord Ashworth is alive, alone,
5 years
armed
ago,
with his
Sir Edmund
poisoned
died in
brandy
this
waiting.
library.
How
The
do you
official
know the
cause
brandy
was
was
a
poisoned
fall,
before they left?
But I've always
Colonel
wondered what
Rutherford
pushed him.
asked.
Of her
Couldn't the killer have
husband
entered
being
after
is
they departed?
murder.
An excellent question, Colonel. And the answer lies in Lord Ashworth's habits. Sir Edmund told us Lord Ashworth always poured himself brandy when working in his study. It was his invariable custom. If someone entered the study while he sat at his desk with an empty glass, he would have noticed. He would have questioned their presence. But if the brandy was already prepared, already waiting in the decanter, then he would pour it himself, suspecting nothing. Dr. Thornton stepped forward, his scientific mind engaged. The decanter, was it examined? If the entire contents were poisoned, there would still be
If
traces.
this came out, the scandal would
An
destroy
astute
too many
observation,
innocent
Doctor.
people.
Inspector Japp.
What
Japp
has
consulted
changed?
his notes. The decanter was found with approximately 3 glasses worth of brandy remaining. It's been sent for
It
analysis, but we
concerns
won't
Olivia
have results
Ashton,
until
my
tomorrow.
husband's secretary.
And if it contains
There
cyanide,
was
Poirot asked,
unpleasantness.
then anyone who poured brandy after Lord
Tell me, Lady
Ashworth would have been
Constance,
poisoned as well.
Have you read the
But
letter?
no one else drank from it. Because, mon ami, the killer knew it was poisoned. They had no intention of drinking from it
terrible,
themselves.
unforgivable word.
Poirot's eyes gleamed, which means we can eliminate anyone
afraid
who would
these
naturally
figures
have
don't
access
lie,
to
Geoffrey.
that brandy.
It
Lord
appears
Ashworth
you've
would
been
not
cooking
poison
the
his own
books.
regular supply.
You can't pin this
That
on
would
me,
be suicide
Constance.
with unnecessary
This is Philip,
complications.
as I choose to
No,
remember him.
someone else
Before
poisoned
the
decanter,
disgrace.
knowing Lord
Before
Ashworth
he became
would
the
drink from it
wastrel
that
he is
evening.
today.
Who has access
There is
to
a
the study?
liaison in the
Lady
household.
Ashworth asked. Mrs.
It's
Blackwood.
unthinkable.
It's who had been
Betrayal.
standing silently in the shadows.
Were
Answered.
you yourself implicated, Lady
Anyone in the
Constance?
family, sir.
How
The study
dare
is
you.
never locked during the
That
day.
is an outrageous
Lord Ashworth
suggestion.
only locked it when he was working on particularly sensitive documents. And yesterday, was it locked at any point before dinner? No, sir. Lord Ashworth was in and out all afternoon, meeting with various people. The door stood open much of the time. So the poison could have been added to the decanter at any point during the day by almost anyone. Japp's frustration was evident. That doesn't narrow it down at all. On the contrary, it narrows it down considerably. It eliminates those who were not in the house during the day. Poirot turned to Mrs. Blackwood. Who visited yesterday before the dinner party? Mrs. Blackwood thought carefully. Sir Edmund came around noon to discuss legal matters. Dr. Waverley stopped by mid-afternoon to check on Lady Ashworth. She'd been having headaches. Colonel Rutherford called at 3 to speak with Lord Ashworth about some business matter. And Mr. Marchmont arrived unexpectedly around 4 o'clock, demanding to see Lord Ashworth. They had quite a row in the study. A row? About what? The serpent's eye, naturally. Mr. Marchmont was threatening legal action, accusing Lord
This
Ashworth of
rose,
theft
Lady
and fraud.
Constance.
I heard raised
It
voices,
holds the
though I
key
couldn't
to the
make out the
secrets
specific
we have
words.
uncovered.
Lord Ashworth eventually threw him out, told him he was not welcome at the dinner party, but Mr. Marchmont insisted he would come anyway. Did anyone else visit? Any servants enter the study? Only myself and Perkins to clean and prepare the room. That would have been
Your
in the morning,
silence speaks
actually before any
volumes,
visitors
Chambers.
arrived.
Why did you lie about
Poirot
the
was
key?
silent for a long
We
moment,
both know
his
the truth.
fingers steepling before his face.
They are
Then he
placed
spoke,
beneath my pillow.
and his voice
each
carried
night,
absolute certainty.
routinely.
The poison was added to the decanter between 4
Chambers
o'clock and
mentions
6 o'clock
Timothy
in the
Ashford
evening.
visiting in
After
July.
Monsieur Marchmont's visit, but before the guests began arriving for dinner. How can you possibly know that? Vivian demanded. Because, mademoiselle, of the psychology. The killer needed to ensure that Lord Ashworth would drink the poisoned brandy that specific evening, not some other night. If the poison was added too early, someone else might have drunk from it. A
I
guest,
have been a
perhaps,
blind,
or even Lord Ashworth
trusting
himself at an
fool.
inopportune moment. No, the timing had to be precise. The decanter had to be poisoned shortly before the dinner party. 'Tis when the killer knew Lord Ashworth's routine for the evening.
You seem preoccupied.
But
tonight, my
everyone
lady.
knew his
Does
routine.
the caviar not agree
Geoffrey
with you, or is
protested.
it something more
You
pressing?
said so
I find it
yourself.
hard to stomach
It
pleasantries
was his
when a killer
invariable
walks free.
custom to have brandy in his study after dinner.
She was my husband's
True.
mistress.
But on this particular evening, there was a specific reason the killer acted. Something had happened, or was about to happen, that made Lord Ashworth's death urgent. We must ask ourselves, what changed yesterday?
£500,
What was
Olivia.
different about that
It's
day?
more than generous for your silence
Sir
on the
Edmund
matter.
spoke up.
I expect
his
you
voice
to be
hesitant.
gone by morning.
I can tell
Monsieur
you what was
Roderick,
different.
your attachment
During our
to Miss
meeting at
Olivia is
noon,
quite profound.
I
is it
informed
not?
Lord
I love
Ashworth
her
that he
instinct.
needed to sign several
don't care what
important
they say.
documents within the next 48
And
hours.
here, amongst the
Papers
silver,
relating
the
to the
truth
transfer of
begins to
certain
gleam.
assets, changes to his will, matters that had been pending for weeks. Changes to his will? Lady Ashworth's voice rose sharply. What changes? Why wasn't I informed? Sir Edmund looked uncomfortable. Lord Ashworth had instructed me to prepare amendments. He intended to reduce Geoffrey's inheritance substantially, creating a trust that would only release funds when certain conditions were met. He was also planning to establish a separate provision for Dr. Thornton. For Richard? Vivian's face flushed. What kind of provision? A substantial sum to be given on the condition that Dr. Thornton cease all contact with you. It was essentially a bribe to make him go away. Dr. Thornton, who had been silent until now, spoke with quiet dignity.
I'm asking you one last time.
I knew nothing
Poirot.
of this,
What
and
exactly
I
do
would
you
never
want
have
from
accepted
me?
such
Spit
money.
it out.
My feelings for Miss Ashworth are not for sale. Noble sentiments, Doctor, Poirot observed. But you see what this means. If Lord Ashworth signed those documents, Geoffrey's inheritance would be compromised, and Dr. Thornton would be faced with a terrible choice: poverty and love, or wealth and loss. Both
Edmund
had
and
strong
I
motives to prevent that
were
signature.
never close.
I didn't even know about the will changes. Geoffrey's voice was desperate. How could I have killed him to prevent something I didn't know about? Perhaps you did know.
I have
Perhaps Sir
nothing to
Edmund mentioned
hide.
it to someone, and that someone told you. Or perhaps... Poirot's gaze shifted to the solicitor. Perhaps Sir Edmund himself had reasons to prevent
We
those
know about the
documents from being
stolen letter,
signed.
Philip.
Sir Edmund's face went pale. That's preposterous. I'm Lord
Olivia
Ashworth's
Ashton had
solicitor.
the most to lose.
My duty is to execute his wishes,
She knew
not
all the
to thwart
secrets.
them.
She's
Your
calculating,
duty, yes.
strategic.
But what
Everything
of your
she
interests?
does is for her
As
own
executor
advancement.
of the
Pure
estate,
ambition
you would
masked
receive
as
substantial
devotion.
fees.
Let us
Fees
discuss
that might be
Timothy
reduced
Ashford.
or eliminated if Lord Ashworth's affairs
What
were
did he
simplified.
want when he
If the
visited
estate
you
was
that
placed
evening?
in the hands of a trust company.
So I
rather
profited
than
from
an
their
individual
mistakes.
executive.
It wasn't clean, but neither
I
is this
resent the
city. I
implication.
regret nothing,
I
understanding.
imply nothing.
Nothing.
I merely observed that everyone in this house had something to gain from Lord Ashworth's death, and something to lose from his continued life. Poirot turned away from Sir Edmund and addressed the room at large. But there is still something that troubles me. The serpent's eye. This emerald seems to be at the center of everything, and yet it remains untouched in the safe. Why? Marchmont's name had been mentioned, but the man himself was not present. Poirot turned to Japp, the dealer in death artifacts. Where is he now? At his home in Bloomsbury. I can have him brought here if you wish. I do wish.
The
Very
seal
much.
is most peculiar.
Poirot's
A
expression was
forgery,
thoughtful.
perhaps, or
There is
merely a
something
clever
about Monsieur
distraction.
Marchmont that does not fit the pattern. His behavior yesterday evening was odd. He arrived uninvited, making threats. He joined Lord Ashworth in the study after dinner, and then he left without the emerald he supposedly coveted so desperately. Why? Perhaps because stealing it would have been too obvious, Mrs. Vane suggested. With all those witnesses, he could hardly pocket a valuable jewel. But he could poison a man. That is equally obvious, equally risky. Poirot shook his head. No, there is something we are not
Sir
seeing.
Edmund Valement's death.
Some connection we have
The
not
more I
made.
examine the facts, the deeper the
Mrs.
shadows seem to
Blackwood,
grow.
who had
It is
been
a
listening
mystery
intently,
wrapped in a shroud.
suddenly spoke.
We depart for Berkshire
There is something,
immediately.
Monsieur Poirot.
See to the luggage yourself, George.
Something I should have
I want
mentioned
no
earlier,
mistakes. This
but I
case
wasn't
is far
certain
too
it was
important.
relevant. Yes, madame. Yesterday afternoon, after Mr. Marchmont's angry visit, I went into the study to ensure nothing had been disturbed. While I was there, I noticed something odd. One of the display cases, the one containing Egyptian amulets, was open, just slightly, as if someone had closed it but not latched it properly. And this was unusual. Very. Lord Ashworth was meticulous about securing his artifacts. He would never have left a case unlatched. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Show me this case. Now.